Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Roundtable Live podcast for December 21st, 2015. My name is Bear Taffy, joined by Northern Lion, Mathis Games, Rockley Smile. Welcome, folks.
Hello.
So good to have you.
Up?
It's our end-of-year indie game review roundup show, or as we like to call it colloquially, the IEOYRR.
Several vowels and several consonants.
The Eeyore.
The show.
The Eeyore.
The Eeyore. We're gonna get sued.
We're not gonna get sued.
We're gonna get sued by the creators of Winnie the Pooh, man.
Given the death penalty.
Okay.
Did you know?
I thought you were just gonna go like cease and desist, but
No way.
Did you know
Really?
that Pooh was written by a Canadian?
No way.
Yeah, dog.
did you know I don't give a shit?
That's
wow,
an American story.
That's extremely culturally insensitive.
That's an American story of perseverance and success.
It's not.
Agreed.
It's actually. Oh, it was created by a British guy.
Oh, okay. That's a little bit better.
There's something to do with
Get
Winnipeg.
that it was a Canadian.
Oh, did you know that the bear is named after the Canadian city of Winnipeg?
Don't take
That's
that
even
away
better.
from
Who
me.
cares about the author being Canadian if the bear can be Canadian instead?
He's the only thing I relate to in that entire story.
100% true, yeah.
So last year, we did a little show that spawned into a bigger show, and now we've been doing that show for about 25 or 26 episodes, which is pretty cool. But we figured we'd do it again, the part where we talk about all of the awesome indie games that came out this year and just summarize and basically give you guys a big fat list of shit to buy for your friends or for yourself on
Christmas
Steam or
shopping.
otherwise. Yeah, exactly. It's our makeshift Christmas shopping list that we give to you 4 days before the actual holiday, so congratulations for that. But we're going to start off and I think just go ahead and dive right in. This is our big indie game review roundup, and I want to start with Mathis. What do you got on the top of your
Witcher
list?
3.
All right, here we go. Let's do it. Dig in! It's not really
it's-
indie, but I guess we'll
know.
start
It's
off with that.
indie. I'm gonna
Right up
stick
there.
in Rocket League later, and the big news is that it made 50 million. So we
Man.
gotta allow The Witcher in through the back door too.
You're really burying the lead there, dude.
Oh, hey, here's Ryan likes Rocket League.
Wait, so we're only picking not indie games now?
No, I don't know what's going on with this Witcher 3
Rainbow
nonsense.
Six
All of a
Fallout
sudden, Fallout 4 and Witcher 3 for the entire 2 hours, ladies and gentlemen. We can talk about Witcher 3. That's due. That's
Witcher
definitely
3
due.
is an indie game.
All right, well, Witcher 3 is my favorite game of the year. I'm actually still playing it. I took a break from it for a month or two, went back, started playing it again after Fallout 4 came out. It's easily what I think the next step in our open world RPGs should be. I think it's beautiful looking. The dialogue choices are great. The side missions and the attention to detail with the stories and just the side missions are awesome. I'm in love with that world. I have been since the first game, and I think The Witcher 3 really kind of knocked out of the park what I was looking for in the third installment. So that's the top of my list, easily.
Easily a game of the year contender, I think. You know, it did so many things right. It hit it out of the park as far as like what it wanted to do. That more or less was just nailed. Like they got so much depth in the story. They provided such a great narrative. It's gorgeous. Like I'm looking at the trailer even for it right now. It still just blows me away how good looking this game is. So really, I have nothing bad to say about it, to be honest. It was just a great experience. I didn't really play a ton of it. I think I played maybe 30, 35 hours, but that alone was really just pretty terrific.
It's weird that that's not a ton of it when you look at the overall scope.
Yeah, exactly.
true.
5 hours of anything, yeah.
Mhm.
Like a full work week.
Oh, man. people
I
getting paid now.
have a running theme through 2015 for me was games that are like really good but far too long for me to ever conceivably finish. Witcher 3 got lost to the sands of time. Metal Gear Solid 5 got lost to the sands of time. There will never be a time where I go back and play those. But
Bloodborne.
But you finished Inquisition, what, last year?
yeah, but 2014 was a little weak.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I agree.
2015 has been like stellar.
2015 has been nuts. Just hit after hit, man. It really has been a huge year. And we're reviewing it now. It's perfect.
Weird how that works out.
Witcher 3 is just, I think, more or less just impeccable. Definite GOTY IMO. Candidate.
I
I shouldn't say definite GOTY. That sends some false flags up.
Did you just say Canada?
I could have.
I thought when you held your hand
Is that
up,
what you
said
want him to
Canada.
have said? Because
Is that some sort of like force move, like
Witcher
to
3
pacify him occasionally?
Witcher
Just
3
say
was not
Canada.
made in Canada, so I'm gonna get that one off your plate straight away.
It was made in Poland.
Yep.
You know what? Its own strong, independent nation next to two larger nations that oftentimes steal a lot of the spotlight. So I feel like in some ways it was made in Canada. Europe's Canada.
Jesus Christ, man! You really, how did you get that back? That was like out in left field, and you
effort.
reined it in. Well done. I'm going to go on the opposite side of the alphanumeric scale and talk about Apotheon, actually. We're going to go a little bit further back into, I think this was probably like first quarter of 2015.
early.
Yeah, this was February 3rd. Yeah, it's a little
I think
while
it was
ago.
the first Roundtable podcast that wasn't a roundup. That was the first game we talked about.
That sounds right, yeah.
that
Seems
sounds
right
about
to me,
correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Apotheon, it's set in ancient Greek, right? Which one? Damn it. I gotta know. I gotta know.
It's not Greek mythology?
It is Greek mythology, right? Yeah, it's ancient Greek. Yeah, I was right. Ascend Mount Olympus, wrestle the divine powers from the pantheon of gods, and save mankind. We all sort of had a not so terrific take on this one, but I think we might have been the outliers because it's looking like at the end of the year here, overall, people are pretty pleased with it.
I still never played it.
We still never played Apotheon.
Yeah, no, you guys were all like passing around codes and talking about it, and somehow I just missed the boat entirely.
What I
fair.
remember from the game is that I liked the art style. I thought it looked great, but I remember the combat, like,
Kind of janky.
it was shitty. It was supposedly it was really deep, but it was shittily explained. Like combat was terribly explained, and it came off as overly like you said, like complicated, like janky. Like it didn't
Yeah.
feel good. And I remember just it was supposed to be like a deep, almost what's that game called? Bannerlord is coming out. Mountain
Banners?
Blade. It was
Oh,
almost
yeah.
Mountain Blade-esque in the way you move your mouse to swipe in a particular direction, but it didn't feel natural, and that really threw me off, and I didn't like it, and for that reason I was like, I'm not a huge fan of it. But it looked great, and I know it was we were, like you said, we might be outliers in that we didn't enjoy it as much as a lot of other people did.
Right.
Yeah, it was like cool setting, kind of intriguing story. A lot of that game didn't really resonate with me, mostly because what Matt has said. The combat was just kind of like, little janky. As we've talked about before, that was by design. It wasn't like they just, or he didn't implement it properly. But yeah, that game is still just, it's like a 6 or 7 for me. Not that that's a bad thing.
Looking back on it now, I don't know if we even really touched on this too much. Of course, it's got a really unique art style, and we got to give it credit for that. It's pretty awesome. It's got, that ancient sort of hieroglyphic feel to it. But that might have been a little bit of what drove the combat mechanics, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like maybe it was designed that way to make you sort of feel like you're this really rough sketch character, that doesn't really have a lot of freedom of motion. That's maybe it's rationalizing it a little bit, but
You're writing like a science test in high school and you don't know the answer to the question, so you just try to come up with something plausible that makes sense. Like, shit, I don't know what plants make in photosynthesis, fiber, It's,
yeah. No, you're dead on. That's true, but it was. No, there were definitely moments where I saw the appeal in this game. Like there's a line in the season opener of Community that I think is hilarious, and that
Spoilers.
I just don't want to ruin anything for everyone, but they say, "I see your value," which is about like the highest praise I can heap on Apotheon. Is like, you know what, I can see why this is good for other people, but not necessarily for myself. So I like the look of it. I don't like the feel of it. It just was, again, yeah, I'll agree. It was probably about a 6 or 7 out of 10 for this year. Not too shabby, but not really one of my favorites.
the most noteworthy thing I can think of about Apotheon is that the developer actually, like, that came out in February, and he put out another game in December, and normally that's like,
Oh yeah, that's right.
they're just like taking shit off the Unity App Store, and if they're getting 2 games out in a year.
Yeah.
So for him to actually have like 2 games, that, even if I didn't really like the first one that much, that came out within the same year, and the second one's totally different. It's not, well, technically there's 3 because there's like a Apotheon Arena or something like that. But Cryptarch is like its totally own unique like space roguelite thing that's going on. So like that's
forgot
really
about that.
impressive. I haven't played that yet, but
I haven't either.
I've been meaning to because it seems right up my wheelhouse.
All right, well, let's go ahead and jump to a new one here. Apotheon, all set and taken care of. Nick, what's on the top of your list?
I've got a lot of different angles to go on, but I'm going to go with, like, the most impactful, I think. All right, there's 2 of those. I'm going to go with SOMA.
Okay.
For now. I was a little surprised that this game hit me as hard as it did. When I started, I came in with the impression that this was going to be sort of like generic scary game. Turns out, it was actually a pretty deep, narrative-driven, first-person, pseudo-horror sci-fi. The pseudo-horror thing being the thing that I think really made it stand out a little bit because it wasn't what it said on the tin in a way.
Right.
It was kind of an intelligent game that valued writing above being in your face. Yeah. And ultimately, the story to it was a lot more gratifying than I think a lot of people may have given it credit for at first, or at least seeing it at face value. And I still think at this point, if you haven't experienced SOMA, it's absolutely worth going back and playing it. I think it's a really strong game, and I think maybe people didn't see that entirely.
It sort of got brushed over a little bit. It had its time, and then it very quickly just went away again.
There's still
I think
a lot
SOMA
of conversation to be had about it, I think, that never quite got had.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think compared to Amnesia, it didn't really have as much, and this is not to insult it at all. I just don't think it had as much shareability. Like, Amnesia was kind of in that indie game consciousness for like 2.5 years. SOMA was like, you play it and then you're done. There's not as much like emergent, I guess, like scare cam stuff that comes out of it.
How much of that might you think would have been to, like, sorry, I totally fucked up that sentence. How much of that do you think could be attributed to the amount of story that you don't want to have spoiled? You know, like with Amnesia, there's not really a ton of in-depth narrative. It's just sort of a straightforward, you're in this house and there's spooky shit going on. But with SOMA, there's a lot more to it. So maybe that's part of the reason why it didn't get shared around so much.
I think it was having seen all of the Amnesia hype for so long and then seeing them go on to this new concept. I think what made me think it didn't get enough coverage is that, like, we just wouldn't stop talking about Amnesia, and SOMA was just like here and gone. Yeah, and I think if anything, it should have been reversed.
Well, because Amnesia, Amnesia's what in a way, and partially because of YouTube as well at the time, redefined horror. What I think a lot of people were considering a dying genre. Along comes Amnesia. It provides this helpless kind of horror where you don't fight, you run. You know, your character's scared. He goes insane from seeing the monsters. Like, that was new at the time, and that really reinvigorated a relatively stale genre. And people are like, from the creators of people who breathe life into the horror genre again comes SOMA. Yeah. And then it's a totally different game than people were expecting. It's not really scary. In fact, the monster encounters in SOMA were annoying more than anything.
I think they were the worst part of the game.
They were.
Actually.
They were absolutely the worst part of the game. The game was more about exploration and the story of what it means to be human and all this stuff. People that were expecting the next Amnesia were probably disappointed in what they got. But if you went in knowing you were getting something different, it was. I thought it was. I'm with you, Nick. I think it was.
When you hear the concept of, like, exploring what it means to be human, when somebody says that to you, you usually go, yeah, you're probably just going to pay lip service at face value and not really explore the topic at any depth. They actually posed some really interesting philosophical questions and then illustrated them through the gameplay, which is a thing you hardly ever see. Yeah,
I think it was you or maybe even like both of you, Nick and Mathis, that were like really singing its praises back when it came out. That was like in September.
It was fantastic.
I went in with low expectations, so I think because of that, I found it to be way better than I thought it was going to be. And in fact, it was one of my favorites of the year.
I wasn't expecting another Amnesia in a way because I was like, oh, that's what they're going to give us. And it wasn't that at all. And I was super impressed with it. I loved it. The only thing I walked away disappointed from was that the monsters felt shoehorned in. It's almost like they felt like, we made Amnesia, we need you to give something to run away from every once in a while. And here's this, like, if you removed the monster encounters, nothing from the story would have been removed whatsoever. It would have been totally fine.
Would it have ruined the game,
better.
Or
I think the game would have been better.
The game would have just been better without them, really.
Yeah, because they're annoying. They're just annoying hurdles to get across, and they don't add anything to the experience.
Yeah. I think the problem was they were trying to escape the realm of, like, how do we do something that'll still be accessible to our audience that we've built and still try to hit this new idea as well. They wanted to do both of those things, and the convergence doesn't necessarily support either of them perfectly well.
Right.
And we're also, I don't know how much it factored into it, but they were also coming off of, and granted they weren't really involved in the development of it, but Amnesia Machine for Pigs, which was a general disappointment as well. But for other reasons.
Yeah, I didn't know
wonder
how much I
that-
wanted to bring that up because, like you said, like it was an entirely different studio that made that, but at the same time, I think they
How much
probably
of the
learned a
general-
little bit from that, right?
And how much of the general audience doesn't know that it was the Chinese room who made that and not
Yeah.
them, because the name Amnesia is slapped onto it, and Frictional had a little bit of a hand in what happened, but they were really mostly hands off. And the other thing I wonder too is how well did Soma do, and how much of its success is going to end up dictating their next game. If this didn't do as well as they needed it to or wanted it to, is their next game going to be a step back towards the Amnesia route of horror, which is for them was, I would say, probably more successful than Soma was,
Yeah.
since Soma,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
like you said, came and went, and Amnesia just stuck around for a long
I was
time.
so hoping that this would be them moving in a new direction and them using this as sort of a bridge measure to say, okay, now we can do a thing that's totally divorced from horror.
Right.
And we can just
Yeah.
tell a great story. Not that, they can make whatever they want people to play. That's
Yeah.
fine. It's just,
Of course.
I was liking the direction they were going away from horror in that, and it was very atmospheric and strong writing-wise, so push it further.
Soma currently has just under 100,000 owners on Steam.
I was on that page as well.
All right, sorry.
That's not a lot.
Yeah, it's not that strong.
Yeah, no.
Was it out on console or as well? It was, right?
It was
PS4?
on PS4, I believe.
Because
Yeah.
I remember them saying they sold like 400,000 copies a while ago, but I don't know if that number's gone up or
Yeah, so
You
not.
think it was stronger on console than on PC?
I don't know. I mean, I
I'd
don't
be
know.
surprised.
Yeah.
But I mean,
They
you
seem
can-
like a PC first.
They
kinda-
do, yeah. They're definitely their main audience. I'd have to say is on PC. Although I don't know if they had some sort of. I wonder if I'm thinking of Until Dawn because I kind of put those two in the same category for some reason. But I felt like maybe they did a little bit better on PS4.
how much?
Until
is the game-
Dawn definitely did better on
Yeah,
PS4.
yeah. But,
10
'Cause
days
that's
after,
the only platform it came out on.
right. No, I
I
meant
was
like.
waiting for that.
Never mind.
So it says the 10 days after launch. I'm on their like post-launch thing. 10 days after launch, 92,000 copies were sold across all platforms. Due to legal reasons, we can't give a per platform breakdown. But that was on October 1st. After 10 days.
Interesting to note from that article, Amnesia Machine for Pigs sold 120,000 copies within its first week.
Whoa. Okay.
People
so that,
saw the Amnesia name probably.
Yeah, that definitely had something to do with it, I'm sure. But that
And then it
still
was
does put
shitty.
it a lot, or definitely puts it into perspective for Soma's overall total now.
Yeah.
Man.
And I thought the game was beautiful too. Like graphically, the game was very nice.
Yeah, I really thought it did better than that. That's pretty surprising. All right, well, there it is. Soma. You can still buy it if you want. It's $30. Maybe that's a little bit of a deterrent, but still. There you go. Let's go to... Ryan, what's on the top of your list?
At the top of my list?
Or, just like metaphorical
Just
top
kinda,
of your
no.
list.
Okay, well,
You
I
want to
didn't
hit
give
Afterbirth now or later is what that
I didn't give it as much thought as I wanted to. In that case, I would probably say if we discount Afterbirth, which we shouldn't, but maybe put it in a separate category
Put
because
it
it's
in
DLC.
reserve, yeah.
Honestly, my game of the year is probably Rocket League. My indie game of the year, especially, is probably Rocket League.
Mathis is angry.
I'm not angry. Whatever. It's not winning any actual awards.
He's
It's
getting
personal
passive aggressive now. Not winning any real
It doesn't
awards this
need,
one.
actual
it was a
awards.
good game. It was a good game.
I just want to know how this like 8-person studio from San Diego that hadn't made a game in like 6 years has become the villain in game awards for you. Like if they win anything, it's like an injustice.
No, I just don't think. I think the game is great. I don't think it's better than other games. Personal opinion. That's all it is. I think it's great. I don't think it's anywhere near Witcher 3 quality or greatness. And I think there are other games that still top it.
Rocket League is better than Witcher 3.
Like if we're
Putting
just
my claim
on
it.
think
everything
that's-
together, if we're lumping
I
everything
honestly don't
together-
even think that's that controversial to say that Rocket League is better than The Witcher 3. Now, before you get angry at me, let me explain why. The Witcher 3 there's a unbelievable larger amount of effort that went into it. Everybody that worked on that game is a master of their craft. It's a singular adventure. It's a game you could buy in May when it came out and then never have to play it again. Or never have to play anything else for the rest of the year. No question about it. But in the same way that, a feast is not necessarily better than a well-crafted piece of sushi, I don't necessarily think that, The Witcher 3 is a better game, at least for me. I have 210 hours in Rocket League this year. Probably like At least 16 of that is from accidentally leaving it on overnight while I slept. However, I don't think it's like an outrageous thing to say that this is at least, in there, in the top 10 or in the top 5. But for me, it was the game that I played the most this year and the game that I'm still enjoying. Some games you finish them and you go, and sometimes this is for narrative reasons, sometimes this is because you're sick of them. But, you play a game for like 60 hours and then you're like, okay, I never have to touch that again. I've never touched Dragon Age Inquisition again. But I've played like 210 hours of Rocket League, and if people tonight were like, you want to get together and play some Rocket League, I'd be like, yeah, I could probably make that happen. Like, I could see myself playing this into the next year.
I think that's where you and I differ. I think it's top 10. I would put it in my top 10 for this year easily, but I'm done with that game. I'm burned out on it. I got bored of it. I used to play it a lot, play it by myself, solo queue, whatever. And then it came to a point for me where I was like, I'm kind of sick of this shit.
Have you played hockey though?
Stop. No, because I don't care. Like, I don't care.
Fun.
Like, it's uninstalled on my computer, and I won't play it again. It was great.
See, that is
you
like...
uninstalled it. Wow.
What is the uninstall? That's like when you break up...
Hold the fuck on. I uninstalled
breaks up
it is
with
not,
you
it is not like the only game that is uninstalled on my computer, but for me, I burned out on it, and I'm done with it.
It's the fact that you specifically brought up that it's uninstalled.
But I'm saying, like... I won't go back, like, to the point where...
See, I deleted her number, guys. I don't care about her anymore. She's not even in there.
You can contact Steam now and have them actually take it off your account, right?
You want to get a refund, man? Is that what you want to do?
Can I get a refund?
You can.
But I'm done with it. That's where we differ, I think, is that I burned out and I'm done. I'm done with the game.
Oh yeah, I completely understand and agree with that. And the more that time goes on, the more, and I look at my preferences relative to the preferences of, there's no way to say this without it coming across as elitist, but I don't mean it like that. But my taste relative to the average taste is that I care a lot less about narrative. I care a lot less about like length, and I care a lot more about like mechanics and like replayability. That those have become my thing for whatever reason. And Rocket League is like a 6-minute match that I could play like 400 times in a day and still be like content with it. Whereas something like The Witcher kind of exhausts me if I play like 6 hours of it. I'm sick of paying attention to all these little threads that are like traveling through the game. So I think for me, Rocket League is like
just go play
almost
Dota.
An ideal game.
No, don't even say that, you
Don't play
monster.
Dota, right?
No. Okay, listen to me, man.
We can't go down that hole. We just can't go back.
I uninstalled Dota.
See, there you go.
See,
Well, it's like an
does
addiction you
update
have to
every 10
break.
seconds, so I can understand that.
Rocket League is one of the best games I've ever played. It actually is. It's so much fun, man. Like I did not expect this at all from this year. I've had kind of a lull in games that I could go back to and play really regularly and have like a pretty good time with. I tried to fill it with a few things. I tried to fill it with like Hearthstone for a little while. I tried to fill it with League of Legends, which was a terrible idea. I have no idea why I did that. And now I've got Rocket League, and it really is just like Ryan said. Like it's so easy to just pick it up and play it. It's like Rebirth in the sense that you can be playing it in like 4 seconds. You can boot it up and be like in a game so fast, and I love that. That's just so satisfying. But also just the fact that it's just pure fun, man. Every part of this game is aimed at how much fun can we have. And it's obviously in a different caliber of game than something like The Witcher 3. I think like the comparisons we're making here are almost entirely facetious in my opinion, because they're not even in the same category. They don't even really.
I agree.
Yeah, like they don't even really matter to each other. So it really is just one of the most pure fun games I've played in years, and I really
You sound
love
like
it.
you're gonna cry.
It's just I have never had an experience like this.
Dude, I think if there's one deficiency of Rocket League is that the community can pass you by after a while. If you're not up on your meta of trying to be good at the game, you'll eventually find yourself getting frustrated by it a little bit, which is the one negative for me. Although I'm more with you than with Mathis. I certainly still love the game, and I'm still up to play it.
I love the game. I just got bored of it.
Well, I haven't uninstalled it, though, and I also just played it the other day, too. But the fact that you can get outclassed by everyone you play against makes the game in some ways less accessible at that point. Like, you just can't keep up.
Another reason I got really burned out on it is because I don't think... this is something we've all talked about in the past, is that I did see a potential for a really cool scene that just never got fed properly.
Yeah.
That's its own.
But that's
a
for
bag
me.
of
Like
worms
I don't
there,
play
yeah.
Dota. I don't play
Quagmire.
Dota anymore. Like I don't touch Dota, but I still
Yeah.
watch Dota regularly. And if they had at least fed the Rocket League scene, I could have seen. I enjoyed watching Rocket League when you guys were playing or I was spectating, whatever. That was fun. And then that scene passed. Like I got burnt out, and nothing was feeding that, so that passed me by. And I was just like, all right, I am officially kind of just done with the game. If they had fed that, maybe I could watching it would have been fun, and I think that would have been something that I think I could have enjoyed. It is still top 10 indie games for me this year, no question. It's just I don't hold it maybe as high as a pedestal as some of you do.
Give it top 5, man. Come on. Give it at least
I don't
top
think it would be
5.
in my top 5.
It's not in your top 5?
It's not my top 5.
Oh,
I think
you
it's in
guys
my top 10,
opened
though.
yourselves up to a world of hurt for the
What
rest of this
the
podcast.
hell?
Probably
man.
like 7 or 8.
Like, you're gonna
What?
put that in the top
Yeah,
5 and not
I'm-
Rocket League?
I'm with you. It's like a 7 or 8 for me. I agree.
7th or 8th best game this year.
Rocket League.
Indie game even.
Yeah,
Not
It's a
even
really
AAA.
good game, but this was a fantastic year.
It was.
Oh, it was. I'm not going to argue that, but wow. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on then. Since clearly this is overvalued. We're
Sore
talking about it
subject.
way too much.
I know, right? Yo, Rocket League's too simple.
Oh, there, yeah, that's hitting some nerves
Needs
there.
power-ups.
What do you mean it's too simple? You know what's simple? The
go.
male orgasm. I would still put that pretty high in my games of the year every year.
You can't compare it, man. They're two different.
They're
things.
not
One's a
even the same,
biological
yeah.
effect to the body. The other's a video game.
Yo, you say simple, I say minimalistic, you know? Spelunky is minimalistic. Downwell's minimalistic. You know, The Witcher 3, maybe it's not comprehensive. Maybe it's overblown. You know, maybe it's bloated.
I like
I don't
Downwell.
believe
Let's
that.
talk about Downwell.
Inquisition was bloated.
Downwell is $3, by the way, so that alone should give you enough incentive to purchase it. Downwell is a curious game about a young person venturing down a well in search of untold treasures with only his gun boots to protect him. Who played Downwell?
I played
Everyone.
Downwell.
Everyone did. Nice.
Yeah, the way you said that did make me want to raise my hand. Something
Oh,
about
we're in class again. Okay.
the cadence of that was perfect.
Teacher bear.
I try. I told you guys I used to be under the Mr. Larrabee handle on Xbox Live, right? So
Oh,
people would
yeah.
always tell me or ask me if I was their teacher from school. So Downwell, yeah, it's all about gun boots. Somebody talked to me about this one because I sort of just would gush about it again because I really liked it. Somebody saved me from gushing about it. Nick, you want to talk about it?
Procedural platformer where you stomp on things and try to make combos, and it has fantastic controls that flow really well and makes you go into hypnosis. I don't know if there's
that's
really
cool.
a great way to say it other than that it's just like a really simple, solid platformer that feels really good to play and has a bunch of replayability by virtue of having many power-ups that you don't see on every playthrough.
Definitely.
Plus, many unlocks also is a thing. You know, getting different cosmetics that change the color schemes of things and such.
It's not that deep. It's about as long as it needs to be. I'd say
Irony.
that.
Well, it's not that deep.
Yeah. I'd say it's like it gives you the amount of difficulty you need and the amount of challenge, like the length of time you spend trying to complete a single run through it is about on par with the other sort of roguelike games that it can be loosely compared to. And it's really satisfying when you get far in it too. Like for a game that's pretty simple at face value, it's really, really satisfying to get pretty good at it. Like you can get to the point where I'm totally not at this point, but I've seen people who are at this point who can like just maintain a combo throughout the course of an entire level and are just, you know, like jumping on everything back and forth, going super fast through the whole stage. So it's very good at appearing simple and then just, you know, giving you the right amount of challenge for the size of game it is.
And it's
Very
scalable. Apparently, when you finish it, there's like a hard mode too, which I haven't
Oh, really?
seen.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you can get all sorts of customizations, like Nick said too. Like there's I forget what they're called. It's like you remember what it is?
The
like
styles?
The styles, yeah, exactly. The ones that actually change the way that you play the game. Yeah. So
It's like different characters in Isaac in a way, only not really characters.
right. So yeah, it's a good one. $3. So seriously, it's a pretty easy sell. It's really fun. It's good for like 20 to 25 minute game sessions if you're into stuff like that. So
Yeah, it's definitely a pickup, play for a little bit, put down kind of game.
definitely.
For whatever reason, it just never got to the point where I knew what I was doing, which is really where like I hit traction in roguelites. Like, you know, I would play it and I'd be like, this is fun. I don't really understand why I died, except like I sort of missed that jump, and then I'd be like, okay, let's do it again, and then by like pure strokes of luck, I would get like a little further or a little less far. So even though I like it a lot, I think it's really well done, and that potential is there. For whatever reason, it just like it was like, you know, trying to hold on to a shit rope, you know. The harder I tried to squeeze to get a feel for how to progress in the game, the more it slipped through my fingers.
Downwell, it's like a shit rope.
I don't think they're going to be putting that one on the Steam page, man.
Not in terms of its smell or composition, just in terms of its viscosity.
I empathize with you there. I definitely had a few times where I just sort of was confused by what happened, and it gets really intense too. Like there's a lot of screens where there's just so much shit happening on there that you just have a really tough idea discerning yourself from the background. So it certainly has that issue, sort of because of the style of art too. Like the pixel art does get a little bit too cluttered especially when your space is so narrow on screen. Like normally you'd have the entire wide space to work with, but this one is probably about like a third of your screen, honestly, if we're looking at it that way. So yeah, it's got a couple of flaws, but again,
You know,
pretty easy to overlook.
It's $3. It's cheap as fuck.
Yeah.
You know when you talk to somebody who just like didn't get Spelunky, and you're like trying to explain to them that it's like this language that just gets deeper the more you play it.
Yeah.
And they're just like, well, I don't. It just feels like a platformer to me. And you're like, oh, you're so stupid. Like that's me with Downwell. That I see like all these people gushing about it, and I'm like, I know that it's there. Like intellectually, I know it's there. But when I play it, I'm just like, fucking miss my jump.
You're just stupid, man.
You're just so stupid.
It's funny,
Maybe.
it's like Spelunky is like the horizontal to Downwell's vertical, right?
Right,
Like,
Yeah.
it's sort of, it's a slower pace, not so twitchy, although it has moments, experience around how to experience through the visor of about 25 different items, whereas Downwell is all about this one really repetitious task of jumping really accurately, quickly, and you have to get really good at that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Super Meat Boy fans will love it.
True. Indeed.
He's right.
No, I can see it.
Mathis, what you got next on your list?
Let's see. I mean, I haven't finished it yet. I'm really taking my time with it. Do we want to tackle Undertale now?
Sure. We did Rocket League already. Yeah, let's do Undertale now.
I feel like I'm getting really close. I play like one session a week, where I play for like 40 minutes, maybe an hour, and I fucking love the game, but it's a time thing for me.
Yeah.
I think the story being told is fantastic. I love the way the combat is. Everything about it so far is great, and it's easily one of my favorite games of the year so far. I know there are people out there who's like, you only like Undertale, you pretentious fucking twat or whatever. Like there are people out there.
Are there people like that?
Yeah, like people like I have read people who like Undertale's overrated. It's actually shit. You just think it's great and you think it's this artistic thing when it's not. I don't know if I want to go into spoilers necessarily because I have not gotten that far, but I adore that game and the twists that kind of just bye Ryan. The twists that come kind of regularly. I'm loving it, and I know you, Bear, and you, Nick, both played and loved it too.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to get my gripes out of the way with it first because I'll just talk positively about it from that point on.
Okay.
I thought it got a little... Oh, I totally forgot about that part of the trailer. It's great. I got a little jaded by it in my second playthrough, which is a weird criticism. But it's true.
That might not be your legitimate criticism, though. Are we talking? And I'll explain what I mean. But are we talking about the structure of the game with regard to things like that? Or?
Probably not. I think I'm mostly just talking about like it wore down on me a bit. Just
it's
based
really
on overall
difficult
what
to
it
talk
is.
about this.
It
game.
is definitely So I'm gonna let's just avoid that whole tangent. I'll say that in general, I didn't really like the combat. I thought the combat was probably the weakest part of the game. I found myself just getting really sick of going up against enemies and dealing with their patterns because it's mostly just pattern recognition and memory, and then that just repeats, and it's just different puzzles more or less that you have to solve for the combat. So I found myself that became a little tedious for me, but pretty much that was the only big issue I had with it. Otherwise, it's terrific. It's hilarious. It's so funny. Like, this game is funnier than any game I played this year by far. It's
is
so
really
funny. That alone is almost worth it, honestly.
The humor is incredible. I don't think any joke so far for me has fallen flat. Like,
Yeah.
I've enjoyed every little thing that they've kind of put in front of me.
And, of course, looking at it, too, I mean, okay, so I want to sort of provide the perspective of myself before I just dove in and played it. Because looking at it, it's so tough to see myself wanting to play a game like this, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I didn't think I wanted to play it until, of course, the hype train came rolling through the station, and everyone was just like, you have to play it, it's so fucking amazing.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's very... It's very shallow on the surface, and then you fall down the hole, if you know what I mean. Yeah, yeah, get it right, like the story, like the story does.
No,
Yeah,
I got it.
yeah, okay.
I got it.
You know, even still after all this time, I'm trying to come up with some of my feelings. And I mean, I've thought about this already for hours, but there's this one element that gets me that's like, well, it's not any one specific thing about Undertale that makes me love it. It's the whole thing.
Yeah,
And the problem about loving the whole thing is that it's kind of like a slippery eel. You've never quite seen the whole thing. There's so many factors of it. It's like you're trying to grab onto this eel, you know? It's
trying to
weird
grab
thing.
that
a
shit
shit
eel.
eel.
Yeah,
It's shit
Yeah.
eel.
Shit eel. All right.
the shit eel, as it's called.
Undertale is like a shit eel. It's always kind of snaking away from you, and you can't even discuss it because all of those things end up as spoilers. So having an honest discussion about it is just very difficult.
Yeah, we might even want to
game.
just let's just cut it off here and say Undertale is a very good game, and you should play it. You
It's
wanna just say
almost
that?
a visual novel, except
bit.
there's also
kinda.
these
Besides
combat
all those
elements that
interactive
make it-
parts and, you know, the RPG elements and the leveling and
Well,
the characters
okay,
and the...
But lots of that is superficial. Like, there's
Yeah.
maybe 5 puzzles throughout the whole game, unless you count combat as a puzzle.
We should maybe
Okay.
zip our lids. I'm realizing that now. But we do want to say that Undertale is really, really, really good, right?
Yeah,
Yeah?
I agree. Ryan's like Mary Norman.
It's not that I think it's a bad game. It's just that I've never played it.
No, yeah, we're not going to put you on the spot.
I'll play it at some point.
Liar.
No, I will. Like, this is one of the few games where, like,
Oh, really?
it inspires, like, a passionate reaction in everybody. It's like, I made 5 hours to play Spec Ops The Line, like, 3 years ago. And then when I played it, I was like, this is trash! And then I got to talk about it for, like, 18 months afterwards. So I think, you know, it's an important touchstone. I'll try to make some time to play it.
Why
just-
didn't
I'm
you
told
like
it's a-
Spec Ops The Line?
Because it was a generic third-person shooter that tried to salvage its own mediocrity with a like a heavy-handed, like, no, John, you are the monsters kind of story. Of course you're the monster. You're murdering like 1,000 people.
Yeah, but
in
you never
every-
thought of that in these games before.
Well, maybe
I mean,
We're
no, you
spoiling
have,
Spec Ops
just
The Line,
nobody
by the way,
said
a
it.
little bit.
maybe I was 6 months too old for that, you know, twist to
Yeah.
hit me the right way. But I was like, this is... I go into every third-person or first-person shooter being like, I'm a murderer. Like, I'm
I
actually
say that all
like...
the time too.
Yeah, I'm like history's worst villain. And then Spec Ops is like, you're history's worst villain.
I haven't
And I'm
had that
like,
perspective yet. Yeah, Spec Ops provided me
Really?
those fresh eyes.
For some reason, like the game that provided me that kind of view initially, way back when, was Uncharted. I don't know why Uncharted,
Really?
but
Yeah.
they lock
you're
you
like
in a
this
room.
everyman.
Yeah, well, yeah, because they lock you in this room over the course of multiple games and throw waves of dudes. And in the end, you're just like, there is a sea of bodies around me, and I'm gonna say something witty now.
I'm an
Like-
explorer.
Belongs in a museum. Like, I don't understand. Like that game made me feel like I'm a murderer. So I don't need Spec Ops to tell me I'm a murderer.
I'm looking for a speaking of being a murderer segue that I could use. How about Hard West? Did anybody
That's all
but
you,
me
dog.
play
I
Hard
haven't
West?
played it.
Nobody played Hard West? Okay.
I
Well,
played the
Yeah.
like the beta a week and a half before it came out.
Okay. Yeah, we can skip Hard West. I'll summarize it real fast. Sort of an XCOM-like Western game. It's very fun, you know, but that alone is basically the entire explanation. So if you like XCOM, you'll be into it probably, and if you don't like XCOM, it'll be a little bit more difficult to get into if this is your introduction to this sort of style of game. A little buggy. It's got a few issues that I came across. I actually had a game-destroying bug that forced me to restart my entire progress, so that sort of sucked.
Oh, those are the worst.
Yeah,
I can relate to that.
Yep. But, yeah.
They didn't fix that game-breaking bug in the 32 hours between when I played it in beta and when it came out.
How could they? Yeah, honestly.
They didn't have time.
But yeah, overall, I'd say it's good for. I'd say it's like a rental, but I guess you can't really do that.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be the person that says things about getting a game and then putting it back in the store. But yeah, it's pretty good. I'd say it's pretty good, but it's not one of my favorite games of the year, to be honest.
My problem with it is conceptually, and I guess in practice, I care a lot less about a linear tactical strategy game than I do about a sandbox strategy game.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just because there's a lot of things that Hard West does right, but there's a lot of things that it does worse than XCOM as well.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'm conflating a couple of things, but I was like, I get it, but I don't care. Like in XCOM, mission starts, I'm like, escape, get out of the cutscene, aliens are here. That's the only premise I need. Hard West is like, your wife got killed by a bullet shot by a drunk devil demon. And then you're like, okay, let's go get the devil demon, I guess.
Maybe that's just you. I don't know. I think a lot of people might have been like, hey, let's go get the devil demon. I like the story to it, actually. I think the story is pretty fun. Like the supernatural stuff that ties into the Western elements, I think works out really well. So it's sort of ridiculously over the top, but just totally by design as well. So it's pretty neat. Yeah, it's not, again, one of my favorite games of the year, but I had a pretty good time with it. That sound about right?
Yeah, I wanted to like it more than I liked it, but I probably could have given it a little bit more time. The first time I tried it out was on stream, and it I did a mission, and then it just didn't save the progress, so I did the mission again, and it didn't save the progress again, and I was like, all right,
I'm done.
Good game.
That's about when it ends, yeah. What else you got on your list, Nick?
All right. Well, I went in one direction. I'm going to go in a completely different direction and probably say that this might be my game of the year, fucking Duck Game.
Duck Game, yeah,
Duck
okay.
Game is super good, yeah.
For the reasons that you cited about Rocket League, literally just the core competence in gameplay and just the accessibility and entertainment value I get from it, it never gets boring to me. And if it did, I could make more maps and it would still not be boring. So, like, there's nothing about that that makes me want to stop playing it, and I could easily see me playing Duck Game for the next 5 years of my life.
That's awesome. I don't
I'm not
feel
even
like
joking.
that
I
about
really
this
think
game.
I will.
I agree 100%. I think
Yeah.
Duck Game for me is, depending on whether or not you count Afterbirth in their top 2 or top 3 for me this year. I liked it at first. It's got that kind of like base level absurdity and humor where you go, oh, this is like, it's funny. But then the more you play it, you actually realize like it's got almost like a Super Smash Brothers like level of strategy and tactics to it that makes it like really, really replayable, and there's a high skill ceiling on it, which is cool.
It sort of has some of that fanaticism that I remember having when I first played Worms, only this is like the real-time equivalent of that.
Yeah,
and also they haven't made 100 iterations of it that are boring by now.
I can see
I
that
still
for
like
sure.
Worms somewhat, but it's just, I think Duck Game is sort of like the optimized version of the Worms concept, with, a much faster-paced gameplay and then tons of different levels and some that are randomized and tons of weapons, and it's still being added onto now, and Steam Workshop support. Like, what else could you ask for? It's got all this stuff.
So, I think I might just not love it as much as you guys because I'm terrible at it. I'm pretty sure that's the only reason. I'm hearing your praise for it, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm realizing now. You know what? I think I just suck at this, and that's why I'm salty about it. But I know I didn't really feel the same sort of attachment to it, to be honest. I thought it was pretty good. Like I liked it when I first played it for the same reasons Ryan said. It had that over the top craziness that made it really fun. And every time I play it, I sort of just I have fun with you guys, but I would never play Duck Game just by myself.
That's what one of the reasons that I have so much more time in Rocket League than Duck Game is I can see myself solo queuing Rocket League, and I have done it, many a time. In Duck Game, I do feel like it is like your enjoyment of it is strongly dependent on whether or not you have people that you know to play it with, but
I don't disagree, and actually I wouldn't probably even solo queue for Duck Game myself, aside from the fact that I've been testing my levels a lot, which is also a really odd and fun way to engage with chat is to load up a custom level and then play it with random people to see how it tests and then have feedback live. Like it sort of added this game development metagame to Duck Game, which is really cool for me.
That is neat.
So definitely one of my top 2, if not my top.
Yeah, it's maybe this is where we have our trade-off then, because I think it's probably like my 7th or 8th best game of the year.
Yeah, it's fine.
There you go. Okay.
You're Nix Mathis.
I am,
They
apparently. We are,
Except you guys aren't getting super mad about it, so I don't know.
We've all got to be a Mathis to each other somehow. We got to make that work. Doug Game is really, really good, though. I came into it with very low expectations, and
yeah, me too.
They blew me away. So
I thought it was like a J. Smith OTI silly novelty game. Like, because he loves ducks a lot.
Like probably archery or something like that, right?
Right.
You load it up and you're like, okay, well, what is it? It's like
Is
a
that-
shitty shooter and you can quack. Like, that's what it is.
We'll play it
But-
for an hour and then we'll kind of move on. No, it didn't work out that way. We're still
No,
playing
it
it
is-
actively.
And I, honestly, like, it's one of the very few games that I've played ever that gets better the more that I play it. Like, there was a sweet spot for Rocket League I may even be past, where, like, my skill and, like, the amount that I wanted to learn were at their highest possible point. Duck Game just keeps going up. Like, every time I play it, I learn new stuff, and I'm like, oh, I can implement that next time.
strange level of depth for sure. Like
very much so. Yeah.
The tactical approaches have gotten increasingly impressive as it's gone on. So that's really cool too. I hope like a competitive scene fosters for Duck Game, don't you? Like I think that would be something I'd maybe watch. Like 2 or 3 years down the road.
It's gonna though.
I don't
I think
think
it's
it
kind of
will.
too late now.
All right.
Sadly.
I know
If it's too late for Rocket League, it's way too late for Duck Game.
That would be hilarious, though, if Duck Game just blew up as an esports game, right? And Rocket League just gets left in the
For
trenches.
whatever reason, I don't even want to see it.
Really?
As weird as that sounds, like in something like Smash Bros, there's like epic moments that are cool for esports potential. But sometimes in Duck Game, like somebody just gets like a poop on their head and then blows everybody away with a laser gun, and I'm
Yeah.
like, that's fun. But also from an esports context, that might be like.
Well, I think it would have to.
It's too quick.
Yeah, it would have to be like a variant that provides the level of competitive draw that esports needs, obviously. But
I actually kind of agree with the Rex's smaller son saying Duck Game is too silly for competitive. It's not like a bad thing. I just think I think
Yeah,
it'll
the
be
tone
rejected.
is maybe a bit off. I'm kind of with you too.
that's fair. Mathis, what else you got?
This is one that I don't think anybody. Well, Ryan can talk about, I think, a little bit, but one that caught me off guard. One thing I was going to enjoy as much as I do is Blood Bowl 2.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I had a feeling you'd bring that one up.
Yeah, like Blood Bowl 2 is one of those games that I always had like a slight interest in because I'm like, oh, it looks fun, but Blood Bowl 1 the UI was a goddamn disaster. It didn't look that great. Everything about it was really confusing, and then I had the opportunity to play Blood Bowl 2 this year, and I was like, sweet, I'm going to check it out, and it really scratched that kind of like, the only thing I can think about is like that chess itch. It's turn-based strategy a little bit. There's a little bit of randomness to it, but I grew up loving chess. I haven't really been able to play chess for years. Blood Bowl 2 kind of stepped in and took over that spot for me, and I've put way more time into this game than I ever expected to. There's just the right amount of seriousness and silliness. The randomness can get a little bit annoying, but I enjoy just kind of like moving pieces on a board and trying to strategically set up like either an offensive drive or a defensive drive, and then watching the dice either fuck me or do exactly what I was hoping they were going to do. I've put in a ton of hours into it, and I think it's a great game. And now, a few days ago, they updated it, and a lot of the problems that people were having, including me, have been addressed in that there wasn't a visual grid on the board in Blood Bowl 2, but there was in Blood Bowl 1. There is now in Blood Bowl 2. They patched that in. They patched in a bunch of other stuff, and they announced if you own Blood Bowl 2, prior to the release of any races, the race is going to be free for you. So they've already announced they're doing 4 more races that are going to be introduced over the course of like a year or two. The next one's coming out in a couple months. And if you own Blood Bowl 2, you get it all for free. You don't have to pay for the races except for the initial 2 bonus races that came with the game. I love it. I love Blood Bowl 2. It's super fun.
Blood Bowl 2 is quite good.
All right.
The end.
The only reason I don't play more of it is because each game is like 2 hours long, or an hour, just over
and
an
a
hour.
half.
Yeah. So, and that's not like its problem.
And there's a huge learning curve because
I was
each
gonna,
race,
yeah, okay. So this is my gripe with it. I look at a game like Downwell, for example, something we just talked about, where I can just jump in and within like literally 10 seconds, I have a pretty good idea of what I'm doing. Whereas with Blood Bowl 2, I have to invest probably like 10 games before I have like a concrete understanding of what's going on.
It is almost like Nick might be able to relate to, like, getting into a grand strategy game.
Yeah,
there's like
yeah.
an arbitrary language of like mechanics you have to learn. Like, oh, this is what everything on the face of the dice means during a roll. This is what gives you more dice versus less dice. This is the skill that negates this aspect of this dice, and blah blah blah. And then every race has like its own unique, parameters and stuff that takes a long time to learn.
And please call me out if I'm wrong, but there's not really a tutorial, is there?
There is a single-player campaign in Blood Bowl 2 that teaches the utter basics of knowing how to play, but it will not teach you the intricacies of every race and what the best things to level up are. Because when you level up, when one of your pieces levels up, you roll die, and that determines what new ability you can choose from like a list of like 5 or 6 different lists. And it doesn't really teach you that, at least not what I played into. So, I mean, I just was lucky where I fell in love with the game, and I went out of my way to watch videos, to play practice games, to learn the races. And there is hours, like I have like maybe 50 or 60 hours in the game or more at this point. And then I probably have like 10 more hours outside the game teaching myself proper like team setups and what strategies are best versus these races versus others, and what I should be doing as this race versus that race. So,
which is very satisfying when you get into it, but also it's just like the matter of getting there. Yeah.
It's if you're not into that kind of thing, it can be frustrating and boring. I love it, so I like dove headfirst, and a lot of my free time, from a month ago, was spent learning this game.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's a problem that it's so inaccessible, though?
No, because it's just taking the already physical tabletop game and turning it into a video game.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think its complexity, and I mean, when I can say this, but it's like once you learn it, it's actually not that complicated. But like Ryan said, you're learning because you're learning a language. I mean, I've read that so many times. It's like, this game isn't that complicated. I'm like, no, it's really complicated if you don't learn it.
It's, after you get 60 hours in a lot of games, they don't seem as complicated as they will to someone who's looking at it for the first time.
Exactly.
As an outsider, I tried to watch videos, and I didn't even find them interesting enough to want to put the time in to watch other people play it. So I think completely
the issue of it having too much complexity or being inaccessible is an issue, but it depends on your perspective. I don't think it makes the game worse, but I do think it makes that like barrier to entry way larger. So from a perspective of it being like a game of the year candidate for everybody, it's way too inaccessible and niche
Absolutely.
It is like tabletop football.
Blood Bowl 2 takes some much needed steps compared to Blood Bowl 1. It's a lot more visually appealing. It's a lot more, the UI is a lot more readable. And it makes certain moments more exciting with cool dramatic camera angles, but there's no getting around. It is really, really complicated. And especially if you don't know what you're doing and then you just get your freaking ass handed to you over and over again. It can be infuriating as well.
And as far as the spectator sport appeal, I imagine like if you don't enjoy watching chess, then you probably aren't going to get much value out of watching a competitive chess match, right? So it's probably about the same thing here with Blood Bowl 2, where if you don't really understand what's going on with this, then you're not really going to be that invested in it. But if you know the intricacies of formations and what race goes up against what race, like you're really invested in that and you're interested and you're watching those things. So you gotta give it a little bit of a slack line there. I guess.
I go out of my way to actually watch a game like as background noise for like when I'm editing or something. So I don't think there's a lot of people who would be into that unless you knew what was going on in the game. So
right,
but I love it. I think it's a great game.
Cool.
I'm gonna piggyback off this.
Okay.
And just quickly mention Frozen Cortex, which scratched exactly the same itch for me. Criminally overlooked, even by people who are like really into strategy games, in my opinion. That's the simultaneous turn-based one from the Frozen Synapse team. This time it's based around American football, like 5v5 American football on on a field with obstacles, kind of like American Gladiators. That game is really good, and I put a lot of time into it this year. But for whatever reason, never really clicked for a lot of people, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention it.
It's really good. Yeah, I haven't really played a game that put strategy into the idea of American football. Like I've played, things like NFL Blitz, which does not do that at all.
It's like the inverse.
Yeah, exactly. So it was fun, but this is basically strategized NFL Blitz with robots. That's sort of how I described it in like my curation of the game, where it's crazy over the top awesome because the robots are actually, beating the shit out of each other and throwing each other over their heads, but it's also, entirely a strategy game. So it's really fun. Like I kind of agree with you there. I remember we played a few games and it was really awesome, but it's pure simple fun, sort of like Rocket League was, except in sort of a totally different way.
I have 19 hours in it.
Nice.
I liked it.
Yeah, that's significant.
Too.
Cool. All right. I want to jump into one that came out a little earlier this year. It was in April. It's Titan Souls. Now, this one was supposed to be a lot better than it was for me.
Wow, very blunt.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
no, I'm gonna come out and say it. Like, I was a little disappointed by Titan Souls. I still think it's good, but I had pretty high hopes for it. What do you guys think?
Well, how were you disappointed, though?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I was a little underwhelmed. That's probably the word I would use off the start. The controls were not really very satisfying for me. Like I got the minimalist approach to it, where you had your one shot, you had your roll, and you had your moving. That was basically it.
Yeah.
But I loved a lot of the bosses. I thought a lot of them were just sort of like, okay, like that's weird. But it just, I guess maybe my hopes were set a little too high. I think I can pretty much just summarize it that way. I thought it was going to be a lot more than it is, and it was maybe over a little too quickly as well.
Was it the structure? Was it the fact that you thought there was going to be like a Zelda-style adventure to it?
I think maybe, because yeah, you're right. It just sort of became a boss rush, Like it didn't have a lot to it. And you know what? Yeah, you're onto something here, because it had the sort of
I've
environment.
given this thought a lot, actually.
Definitely. Like it had the environment that definitely would facilitate that.
It seemed like it wanted to kind of give you this very interesting world, and they did fuck all with it.
Mm-hmm.
There were like a couple of nods toward the adventure point, being like the shooting the fires to open up.
Yeah,
the
there were a
cave,
couple of world
or
puzzles.
The forest where you walk through the angle Zelda style there.
And then there was also, this is probably a huge spoiler, so I'm not going to say it completely, but there's like a moment where you meet someone else, and it sort of felt like it was supposed to be this grand revelation, but then nothing really comes of it.
I kind of want to, I want to talk about the spoiler a little bit, so this is a spoiler warning.
Okay,
for
spoiler.
everybody in chat. One of my biggest problems is kind of going back to what Ryan has a problem with, that shooter game. It's like, the story was so fucking in on itself and being just like, but it's Shadow of the Colossus in that, but you are the monster. And I was like, that's where you're going with this? Like, the whole time, there's this really interesting world, and I think there's these cool bosses. I'm like, what is going on? What's happening? And really, the only big twist is like, you're the bad guy. Now you become him, and now you get to do it all over again. I'm like, really?
You're saying it kind of cribbed the twist from Shadow of the Colossus, which is the game that was already apex in the first place.
It came across like it was like this. It kept trying to pretend it was something it wasn't. It pretended it was deeper than it was. And I'm like,
I think you're mistaking them setting a tone, though. Aesthetically, there was absolutely a certain rich tone that they were trying to maintain.
Maybe.
And I don't see it as pretentious, but I see why you think it could be that.
Like, the other way you could have framed Titan Souls is by just having, like, a level select screen of bosses.
Right, yeah, it's like Mega Man.
Right, and then you wouldn't have... Yeah, if you just did it like Mega Man or something.
Yeah.
And then I don't think the perception of it being like, well, they wanted to make, like, not Ocarina of Time, but A Link to the Past, and then they just only did the bosses from it wouldn't be there. Right. But I agree with Nick. I think to me, it seems like an aesthetic, like, stylistic choice to kind of make you feel like you're a tiny little dude in this huge, grand world that is bigger than you are. So, like, that kind of richness in the environment design actually was one of my favorite parts of the game.
I will definitely say that there were select few boss fights that were awesome. Like, they just felt so satisfying. Like, there was the one against the knight that fired arrows at you, that fired the giant arrows, and there are the 4 pillars in the room. Like that. Oh, it's showing up on screen right now, actually. Yeah, that one was fucking awesome. But there are moments in the game that feel so cool. And that was, I think I wanted that all the time. I guess like I wanted just like total stimulation overload with this game, and I didn't get it. But it was definitely satisfying for quite a few moments.
The reason I kind of jumped on you when you said you started to criticize it a little bit was because I think I had some of the same exact questions when I started it up. I was hoping that this was a much longer, more developed situation, and I think I had set my sights on that when I saw it in development. Then when I got the final product, I had to sort of rearrange my thinking about it to then be okay with what I actually got. And I was happy with it. I really love the game. I just think it had such potential. I wish it could have gone further. So I think a lot of your criticism was just you saw the potential as well,
God
and
damn
it might
it,
not
man.
have been fully realized.
You are nailing this, and I haven't been able to formulate it into words until now. But you're exactly right.
I thought a lot about this game. I really liked it a lot.
I honestly think a lot of it's a lot of little things hold it back from greatness for me. One of the other things that I have a small thing that not ruined, but made the world less fun for me, because the world is cool to walk around and explore and kind of experience that you're this little guy in this big world. But that kind of, for me, that specialness, that coolness gets taken away every time you kill a boss and you have to walk the fucking world every goddamn time. And you have to like, all right, I've seen this path 1,000 times because I've died to this one boss. If they just started you outside of like the boss room and didn't make you walk to the boss, I feel like walking the world would have been a lot cooler, because instead of having to walk the same path 100 times and making that specialness get torn away.
Yeah.
I hated that. I hated
That's your
dying.
only punishment for dying, though, is walking for like 10 seconds.
And it's not even a punishment.
It's
just but it's annoying. It's not even like
It's
a
just a
punishment.
tedium,
It's annoying.
really.
It's
Yeah.
tedious. Yeah, it's very tedious. I wish, like,
You have to think of the gameplay loop, though, man. You keep dying, right? And then you come back and you're like, well, this is my interaction with the game outside of this boss. And it's to build that suspense going back to it, saying, well, I'm going to think for like 5 seconds as we walk back to this, how I'm going to approach this again. It's to give you a little bit of a respite between constantly just going boss, 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 boss.
But
That's
it's
fair.
I see where you're coming from, but for me, it didn't. It just became a nuisance. It wasn't something that I was like, all right, I'm gonna think about it. It's like, no, I know how I'm trying to fight this boss. I know what I'm doing is right, but I'm fucking up in this one small area, and I don't want to fuck up again because I don't want to walk that path again. And now I'm like, maybe playing a little twitchier. It's like playing the Lost on Isaac. One fuck up and I'm dead. One fuck up and I'm dead. And
That's the tension that you've got, though, right? Like, they need that for the tension. Otherwise, what is there to worry about? You
But
literally
at least in
just trying
Isaac, the stakes are high and you lose your run. In this, it's like I have to waste 10 seconds of my life walking back to this boss.
I
don't know,
dismiss your criticism either. I think that the
No,
game needed more diversity. I think
It's
it needed-
weird. I find myself agreeing with Mathis that the walking back part is the worst. But at the same time, I also agree with Nick that I think it's completely necessary for the game. Otherwise, it basically just ends up being a game jam game like it started with, where you just, exactly, like, boss, go through a door, boss, respawn, boss. It's weird, because an extra 10 seconds of walking to the boss shouldn't be a meaningful bit of gameplay, but because that's the only other thing in the game, it sort of is. And I do think it's kind of important for tone setting, so that you're not just exclusively, like, redlining the whole time. But it's such a weird game, because I don't know what you add to it to make it more consistently engaging. Because if you just filled the world map with, like, skeletons, and then you go, oh, shoot the skeletons, and they drop
no, it shouldn't be that.
It definitely
That
doesn't
would
fit
be
with it
horrible.
either. I mean, like, there's a part of it that we haven't even mentioned for people that don't really know what Titan Souls is all about, and it's the fact that you kill each boss with one hit. So the entire point is it's sort of like a puzzle game, much alike much akin to Shadow of the Colossus, and they wear their inspirations on their sleeves. It's not really like they're trying to hide that this is what they're doing,
It's
but
an homage.
yeah, exactly. But like you said, you can't really fill the world with monsters or anything like that, because the entire point is that you kill each boss with one shot. You're like One Punch Man.
Maybe the idea was just too simple to turn to a full game. Maybe that's just the problem.
Yeah.
Maybe what they
No,
want.
I
Maybe
don't
was
think
just,
so.
Maybe
I don't know.
or they could have just filled the world with like secret
They
areas.
needed
to
more
explore.
secrets. That's exactly what I was going to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
There was one situation where you go way off the rails and you find a secret area that's like a boss.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah,
isn't the
I
boss.
found him. Yeah.
And those
Does it-
things needed to be everywhere, I think.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. More, not even necessarily secret bosses, but just secret
Things
stuff.
you can touch and interact
It
with.
didn't
that
even
give you
really
lore.
need to be that significant. It just needed to be something that gives you
Something
aim.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are we coming at this from the perspective of? It needs it for the purposes of it to be worth $15, or it needs it for the purposes of
No,
it
to
to
be
be
more
like a true
fulfilling.
classic or something?
Yeah, more fulfilling or better than it became.
Okay.
Something that I
I
would
would-
talk about like a month later, as opposed to
Yeah.
just totally forgetting about it.
Something that goes from good to great.
Yeah.
Something that transcends the concept of simply a boss rush, because
Which
that's
is all
kind
it
of what
ended up
ends up
being. And then they built that in as a later mode, was just boss rush. Just like, how fast can you beat the game?
Well, that's
I
what I was
think-
doing anyway.
This is
Yeah.
like a really strange thing because I think I may like the game the least out of any of us. However, I respect that they spun the design out of that game jam concept and just kept it like as its own singular thing. Like, would it be better if it was like more like A Link to the Past? I think the question has like a null answer because it wouldn't be Titan Souls anymore. Like if you make it like Anodyne or something like that, it's a completely different game. I like that this is like I can play this game and know exactly
It's very
what they're
pure.
going for. Like they have a design vision, they adhere to that vision. It has its negatives, it has its positives, and this is Titan Souls. Like I would rather play Titan Souls, which I might rate at like a 6 or a 6.5, over like a 6.5 game that had a much larger scope. Like I'm not going to say specifically Anodyne, but like an adventure game that wasn't a classic, I guess.
Yeah. It's about right.
It's just new, It's
Yeah.
it's like it's its own thing.
Agreed.
Well, I think the part that we're also missing too is just the pure elegance and the art approach that they took with this game, because I think about half of it outside of the gameplay was just appreciating that you're walking through such a well-realized
Yeah.
vision.
It is.
And
It's
that isn't
gorgeous.
something that comes through in words most of the time. You need to actually walk around in it and see it,
Hmm.
all the little subtle animations and things that are happening. And we see all that, supposed depth, and just want there to be legitimate depth that can complement that. Because right now it's just sort of walking through a museum that is punctuated by boss fights.
And it gives you the sense that you're gonna do that. I think that's maybe why we're talking about it so much, is that we felt like that was gonna happen so strongly, and then just sort of nothing spawned from it. But
They even have all this fast travel around it, as if there's all these times you're going to be going from one point in the map to another. You might use them once in the game, if that even.
right, yeah. So, yeah, I think it. Yeah, there's the two sides that we're arguing both have merit, I think, here. So it's a very interesting position, but I'd say it's worth it. I think people should play it because the boss fights are pretty damn satisfying. Like most of them are very, very good boss fights. But it's got the gripes that we mentioned, and overall I think if you look at it like not from the perspective I think a lot of us had of this is going to be an awesome, in-depth, crazy world that we can explore. This is Titan Souls. One shot, one kill for a bunch of bosses. And then that's the game. And that if
very
you look at it like
pretty
that, it's
puzzle
like,
game.
cool. Yeah, that sounds great.
Yep.
Awesome. Let's see. Whose turn is it? Probably Ryan? I think it's Ryan.
Sure. Okay. I'm gonna say keep talking and nobody explodes. But I'm also gonna preface it with the disclosure that I am friends with some of the people on the development team. We've hung out socially. It's like the ideal disclosure case because everyone agrees that the game is dope.
Yep.
It's like it doesn't call your integrity into question too much, but yeah, like you should know that I've hung out with people on the development team for years, at least, dating back to like PAX 2013 basically. So Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes is that asymmetrical multiplayer game where one person is holding onto the bomb, they have a bunch of modules, they don't know how to solve them, they're basically like little micro puzzles, and then any number of people just have a manual, they can't see the bomb, so it entirely hinges on the conversation that happens between them, the communication that happens between them. And what is really cool about Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes that I don't think any of us anticipated is that, you know, we all played it on VR, and we're like, this is really cool on VR, but they're fucked, right? Like, unless it comes out and everybody owns an Oculus or something, this is like a niche game on what is still a niche medium, basically. So I think we all kind of, or at least I won't speak for you guys, but I was like, this game's good, but nobody's going to play it, and they're going to go broke and have to work as like accountants or something. Right. Yeah, and it's so cool that it came out with like this, like you can just play it on your monitor over Skype, and that was like what ended up making the game for me. Is like, yeah, if you're in the same room, literally in the same room, that's going to be hard to not look at the bomb or not look at the manual. But the fact that you can play it over the internet, basically with simulated net play, as long as everybody's using the honor system, made it like completely work. It made it like it was an indie game with, as far as I'm concerned, online multiplayer, and it didn't require any netcode to make it happen, and it just made it function perfectly. So we got that experience that we've had, you know, an hour every PAX playing this game and being like, that was awesome, basically on demand. So I'm really impressed that they managed to make it work, and I had complete blinders on about the fact that the solution would be so simple, and I'm really glad that it got the credit it deserves, because it's also like a completely original style of game. Another game that was spun out of a game jam as well.
I will also offer a disclaimer that I got really drunk one night at PAX East and talked Ben Kane's girlfriend's ear off about how amazing their game was going to be.
I think we've all drank with Ben Kane.
Yeah, probably at some point, right? Yeah. But yeah, it's just a lot of fun, and the amount of puzzles it's got is great, and the complexity of the puzzles just builds really well as you scale up. So it just gets to the point where you're going crazy with all these nonsense like mazes and Morse code and fucking ridiculous patterns on strings and all this stuff. And it's really just the ideal party game. It's something that we love to see every year, of just a game that provides just the most awesome, fun-loving, everyone goes crazy trying to figure out how to solve this problem together thing that really works so well. I don't even honestly have any problems with it. I can't think of a single issue with it. It's just really fun.
It actually has made me like a better communicator from like an academic and business standpoint as well.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
As ridiculous as it sounds, now if I'm like doing like anything that's like group work or something, I'm like, I distill it down to only the information that needs to be passed on, and nothing that could possibly be a distraction.
Right out the fluff.
I will do this. You will do this. Here's the mechanism that we're both going to use, and then we'll reconvene in like, you know, an hour and a half or something.
It teaches you management too, right? Like it teaches you how to handle a bunch of people sometimes and delegate tasks quickly and keep your cool under pressure. Like there's all of these positive virtues you can get from this game that you would never expect to be able to get from it.
Man, that's a good selling point.
As ridiculous as it sounds, is this coming across as like a compliment for a game? I could see this being like a team building exercise in like an office or something.
Yeah. Oh my god,
you like
that's
break
great.
Off into like groups of 4 people, and you have to work together to solve these bombs.
Absolutely,
that's a little hardcore though for them. But
I had to go to I had to go to a ropes course with my office the last time I did a team building exercise. Man, this would be way better. I would definitely prefer this.
You would have to teach Jerry from HR how to read Morse code.
Jerry,
fucking
Jerry. Nobody likes Jerry.
That's Parks and Rec.
That's
Jerry,
an Undertale
right?
reference.
Oh, is it? I was going TV.
Television.
Mathis, you love Keep Talking, right?
I do. I think it's a great. I think that I like the idea that there's going to be, or at least seems like there's going to be multiple more different manuals for different types of bombs, and just as a game that he can continually iterate on and make more and more fun. I hope it does. I hope it continues to do well, because I know it did pretty well at launch.
Yeah,
right?
how did it do? I'm curious.
Well, yeah.
It got picked up by a lot of YouTubers, I think.
Definitely, yeah. It had a huge Twitch and YouTube bump, so that was really cool.
And again, that's something that I never would have expected.
Same.
Not because the game was at all bad, but just because, man, it's just,
you know, you can't predict YouTube, man. You don't know what's gonna work and what's not.
I mean, it's the kind of thing that is great to play, but I didn't know it would be that enjoyable to view, especially if you're watching someone who's using the manual.
Right, yeah.
Or someone who's good. That's what's been awesome, is when we've been playing and we actually know what we're doing and we can like rattle off those modules, people are still like, wow, this is really satisfying to watch.
I remember in the initial hype wave that there was the guy, I think he was in the trailer too, actually. There's a guy that has a group of his friends that are all just so good at it, and they're doing all these master level bombs all the time on Twitch, and they were getting like thousands of viewers. And this was a channel that had probably 1,000 followers total. They just had like 2,000 or 3,000 people that were watching them disarm those high level bombs.
Yeah, it was really cool.
All right. Keep Talking No Big Explodes is awesome. It's so much fun. You should absolutely play it.
Agreed.
Allow me to piggyback again.
Yeah.
Jackbox Party Pack 2 as well.
Oh, shit,
It's
yeah.
similar.
I didn't play it that much, but it's good.
It's. I mean, I don't know how much you get. It's like a board game. I don't know how much you get out of it if you don't stream or you don't have like people over. I don't have people over,
Yeah.
but I stream. So like it has limited use there. And if you don't like the Jackbox Party Pack 1, you're not going to give a shit about the Jackbox Party Pack 2. Not all the games are winners. Like Bomb Core is basically just a worse version of Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. But, you know, Fibbage 2 is great. Quiplash XL is great if you're into that sort of thing. Bidiots, Kate and I have been playing the shit out of. It's a lot of fun once you kind of get your head around it. Similar kind of game and or similar kind of, I guess, genre as Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. Also good.
Part of games.
Yeah. Not much to say about that one.
These are the kind of games that if you like went to like a super nerdy bar and they had like a booth set up for Keep Talking, or if they had a booth set up for Jackbox, you'd be like, oh yeah,
Right.
let's play some bar-wide Quiplash. Let's play some Keep Talking.
There we go.
That would be pretty good, actually. Yeah.
Let me jump back into the earlier part of the year again. One of the massive releases of the first quarter was City Skylines.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
That's the
Great game.
Yep, city builder from Paradox. Or sorry, this was developed by Colossal, published by Paradox. Introduces a whole bunch of new stuff to the city builder. Of course, the big storyline back in the earlier part of the year was that this was the answer to the debacle launch that was SimCity.
R.I.P. Maxis.
Right, yeah. So City Skylines came along and was like, hey, remember all those awesome things you thought SimCity was going to do? Well, here they are.
Without DRM everywhere.
Right, with no DRM, mod support, fucking full community support, all kinds of stuff.
It's like a real game.
It really did just kind of smack SimCity in the face with its big old dick.
And the expansion really addressed a lot of the problems people had with it, as far as like a day-night cycle with higher crime at night, and people going to I think better AI with like the jobs and stuff, if I remember correctly. But it's really good.
What was your favorite part of City Skylines, Ryan?
It was just kind of like, this is a cop-out answer, but it was just kind of like the kind of game that was really like kind of meditative and iterative to play, where you'd be like, okay, I've got like a city for 1,000 people, I'm going to manage their needs, and then I'm going to add another area, and then I need to manage their needs, and that gives me more money, which allows me to make a larger area. Like it builds on itself in an incremental way that was really satisfying. And it's funny because like I'm thinking now, I'm like, I didn't like City Skylines that much, but then I think back to like March when it came out,
We're playing the hell out of it, yeah.
that's all we were playing. Everybody was playing City Skylines all the time, myself included. I probably got like 50 or 60 hours in it. It was one of those games that when I stopped, I just stopped for good.
Yep.
But yeah, like I got 33 hours, but it would be dishonest for me to not, count that in my favorite games of the year. I think I had Banished in my favorite games last year, probably, or close to it at least, and it's a lot better than Banished. Not that Banished is bad.
Different kind of game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is.
sort of.
Oh, I think it definitely is. I think Banished had a lot more limitations to it that sort of made it a different thing.
It is a different kind of game if you go on like 4 times Zoom. If you're on 1 time Zoom, come on.
I don't know, man. Like, it really is. There's just so many differences there. But
What is Banished?
Banished
more
has
like
you're more
City?
worried about making sure you're balancing your population so you have enough people who are chopping wood or farming and producing things. Like your civilians, I guess, matter more in Banished than they do in City Skylines. City Skylines is a traffic manager, city planner. I'd say Banished is more of a survival themed.
I really like that you listed it as a traffic manager first, because it honestly sort of is. Like,
It is.
the traffic in
I
this
think
game.
Ryan
Reddit
said
poster about it.
when we were initially talking about this in the podcast, like Ryan said, and I agree, it makes me appreciate just like city planning.
Yeah,
a lot
absolutely,
more.
it does, definitely. Like, I remember the days when we were playing it incessantly. I would go out and drive around and just think to myself, man, this is a really well-designed road. This is really efficient.
And you think back to your spaghetti streets, and you're
Right,
like,
yeah, exactly.
I'm always like, whenever I'm driving in Vancouver and there's like a main thoroughfare that doesn't have a protected left, I'm always like, so it's a colossal order. It needs a turning lane.
I remember when we talked about this too. We've talked about City Skylines quite a few times on the podcast, but I remember talking about what was the moment that sort of made you stop playing. So I think for me, it was definitely when I basically built everything. So I had like all the super expensive structures, and I had a decent sized city. And I'm not really the kind of guy that's wanting to go for the million population sort of stuff. I'm just pretty cool with what I had at that point. And that was definitely where I dropped off. But I know that there's a lot more stuff now, and especially with the day and night cycle expansion and all the new content. Of course, I'm sure there's mods up the wazoo now that totally change everything. But I imagine there's still quite a few people that are playing this pretty frequently.
It's a great game, but I'm with you. Where like the problem with it is that there's like this curve of enjoyment, where like at the start it's really fun. Well, it's like 6 out of 10 fun because you don't have enough resources. So you're like, okay, I've got these constrictions where I can only where I can only make like something this big, and I need to save enough money for you know, hydroelectric plant or whatever. And then when you have like just enough resources to do whatever you need to do, but not enough to just basically have infinite money, that's where it peaks. And you're like, oh, I've got to consider like the strategic concerns and stuff like that, but I can't just solve all my problems with money. Eventually you reach a point and you're just like, my city's like as big as it can be. I get like way less enjoyment out of making it like another 20% bigger.
Right.
And that's kind of where it fell off for me. It's just like, it doesn't make it a bad game, but for me, like the late game wasn't really there. I was just kind of like, that's the end.
Yep. I agree.
Kind of like XCOM, like I have played like the first like 3 hours of XCOM campaigns probably like 30 or 40 times. And then all it takes is like, you know, one imperfection, like, oh, my highest level soldier died. And then if I'm playing not on YouTube, I'll just be like, okay, restart, try to do it like perfectly. If I've built an improper city in City Skylines, I'm just like, scrap it, start again. Like it's more enjoyable to start again than it is to fix a problem and then.
Although I there's a point where I definitely get too attached to want to start it over because I just even though I know it just is so shitty and I would be so much better off completely wiping everything out, it's just that emotional attachment at some point, man. It may be a little shitty pile of junk, but it's my little shitty pile of junk, and I'm going to take pride in it.
I wish they actually pushed that harder. I wish every city you made somehow had more relevance to you as the player, because I think what Ryan said is more likely the fact for more people. And was for me that it's easier to just start over than to fix a problem. Mm-hmm. And I think if you want to establish some sort of continuity, you want the player to value their personal city, or they all start to feel sort of the same. And they did for me. Yeah. I also didn't really want to put in the time investment to learn how to do proper road planning, because that's like a job. And I wasn't that into it enough to want to put the time in.
That's actually where I stopped, was when I was like, I can either stop now and accept that this is my skill level in this game, or I could start researching roads. I was like, I don't care.
The way you said that alone, there's so much disdain in your voice for that.
Well, I mean, I didn't care enough to go research.
Some people
roads.
that really appeals to them on a personal level,
sure.
and I'm not one of those people for whatever reason. So
yeah.
Michael A.L. Fox, as someone said in chat, he would do like hour-long videos for City Skylines that were just him planning roads. Not building roads, just planning. And some people like watching him do that, because for him it's like it's all about efficiency, and he gets like a ton of satisfaction out of everything being like just as expansive as it needs to be and no bigger. Like that, and that's really cool. But I'm with Mathis, where I build roads that are like straight grids. Yeah. Or like, you know, a spiral. And if that doesn't work, I'm out. Like I can't.
Go watch, if you want like super detailed stuff, like Quill put out a huge series, and then you had like a sub-series of tutorials and different types of roads and where they work better. I was like, I'm done. I can't. Like I had a great time with the game. It's I wasn't willing to go that next step.
Still got 200,000 players in the last 2 weeks. That's kind of crazy.
It's crazy, actually.
8 million owners.
Yeah.
It's crazy talk.
That's awesome, though.
It is. And you know what? Like, good for Colossal Order, because they made Cities in Motion 2, which were actually traffic engineering games.
Yeah.
And they were okay, but super niche. And this is like a city builder you can feel good about.
It's like they disguise their traffic simulation games as a city builder, and everyone's like, "Oh, now we love this."
They roasted their vegetables, and now kids like to eat it.
And now, and it was one of those games that made me realize that the Unity engine isn't trash. And I was like, wow, the Unity engine can do a lot.
Why did you think it was trash?
We've talked about it before. We've talked about it before in that the Unity engine is just so available that my brain is like, I've seen so many bad Unity survival horror games. It's so common.
It's ubiquitous.
And when Unity is in the hands of a talented developer, what can be done with it? Impressive.
It is impressive that this game is Unity, but it's not like most Unity games are made by untalented developers. Like, that's just...
I don't know. Have you seen Early Access in Greenlight?
Why do you seek that stuff out then? Like,
if you're looking at it from the grand scale of like literally every person that's ever made a game, then
Look,
yeah,
man,
maybe.
I play a lot of survival games,
dude,
all right?
This
A
is
lot of them are
actually
Unity.
like, you know, this
For
is like
me,
somebody writing a bad game in C++ and Notepad and being like, Notepad sucks. You know? It's like, it is what you give it.
It's not that I seek that stuff out. It's just that because of my particular taste in games, I probably see a lot more of the bad side
You probably
of Unity.
do, yeah.
Yes.
You're more resentful toward the Unity asset store than the Unity engine itself.
That is probably 100% true. I'm
The
so
fact
sick
that
of seeing
you
those
see-
plastic hands swinging
Yeah,
at
man,
me.
exactly.
The fact that you see so many awful Unity games actually means that Unity is amazing. Because
That it's so accessible.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It
I
enables
get what you're
those
saying.
people to make those games.
But it needs to be in the hands of a talented person to be good.
Or a talented
Which
team
can
of
be
people.
said about any engine, yes.
Or you could be the average consumer, and when you see something in early access that looks like shit, just ignore it.
Look, if they send me a code, there's a good chance I'm going to give it a shot.
Hey,
for like 10
Mathis is
minutes.
not the average consumer, man. Come on
That's
now.
true.
All right, let's go for another game that was actually released on the exact same day as City Skylines. I didn't know this until I just looked at it. Hotline Miami 2. Wrong number.
Oh, yeah.
Came out on March 10th.
Man, that was a great Roundtable week.
yeah,
it
man.
was.
It really
Two
was.
bangers.
That was early on in Roundtable, too, man. We had a pretty hot slate at that point. Hotline Miami 2, the brutal conclusion to the Hotline Miami saga, set against the backdrop of escalating violence and retribution over spilled blood. And so this carries on the story from Hotline Miami 1. And if you're like me, you have no idea what that is. Just no clue. No, I have no idea what's going on in that game. Do you guys? I don't understand it.
Hotline Miami 1?
I did, yeah. I played both of them all the way through. I have no clue. I'm totally lost. We'll talk about the gameplay first of all. It's a lot more of the same from Hotline Miami 1. First of all, both of these soundtracks are so good. So good. You should absolutely get those. Hotline Miami 1 was great. I really enjoyed that game. And then Hotline Miami 2 is pretty much more of the same, but there were a few issues that people took with Hotline Miami 2. I think one of them was sort of like I think blind spots sort of became a bit more of a problem where you had to deal with a lot more people who just sort of shot you out of nowhere, it seemed like, in this game, which is a weird issue to creep up in the sequel, right? Like, that's not very common.
Yeah, because was the first one didn't have giant rooms like that, right?
True, that was probably part of it. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a lot more of the same in a very good way, though. I really enjoyed Hotline Miami 2. It's crazy, it's over the top, and as I mentioned, the story's pretty outrageous, but apparently people do a better job following it than I did. But the gunplay is just as satisfying, in my opinion. There's a lot more variety to it. There's a lot more ways you can handle levels, although for the most part, you probably just want to not die. That's the biggest factor. I didn't necessarily even try to employ a strategic approach to a lot of stages. I just sort of like desperately went room by room, hoping that I wasn't going to get killed, more or less.
Yeah.
Nick, what do you think about Hotline Miami 2?
I found it rather tedious, and I wasn't a huge fan.
See, I want you to tell me about this.
I wasn't a massive fan of the original one. I thought it was just it was a solid gameplay mechanic, but it didn't appeal to me as much as I think it did to you guys. I appreciated the art style to it. I thought it was interesting to look at, and I thought the music was decent, but it wasn't enough to catch me for a particularly long time. And I also really didn't think it needed a sequel, personally.
That's true.
So-
I'll sort of argue that for you. Yeah, it's interesting that it got a sequel, especially kind of quickly too. But yeah,
I mean, I
I
don't
was
want to
gonna
just
say
be
I can't
cynical,
believe
but
this sequel took so long.
really.
Yeah, because I don't know. To me, it just seemed like more Hotline Miami, bigger levels,
Oh,
markedly
okay.
worse,
From that
but
argument,
still
yeah.
pretty good.
you just mean because the mechanics are so unchanged, like what would stop them from making it faster?
Yeah, and maybe this is like an overly, well, I mean, just an ignorant way to look at it. But the story is not, The Witcher 3. There's not
Yeah,
like
no,
full-time authors employed writing like
Right.
lore that you find in the game. Not that it doesn't take, work to come up with it, but I feel like I played it for like 2 years at PAX's, and I was like, it's here. Like, why isn't it out? But
Yeah, I actually want to correct myself there. I thought for some reason Hotline Miami came out a lot more recently than it did. That was back in 2012.
2012.
Yeah, Jesus, that's crazy.
I remember my problem with the second one. I liked the second one, but my problem with the second one is that, unlike the first one, aspects of it were randomized. So when you went into a level and you died, you could not count on the enemy being in the same place or having the same weapons the next time you went in. So much Hotline Miami
Right.
1 was more of a puzzle game for me, where Hotline Miami 2 was more of a crapshoot, and it led to me doing like stupid tactics, like hiding in a room, shooting one bullet, and waiting for all the enemies in the nearby area to funnel through a door so I
Oh,
could kill them
yeah.
all. And that wasn't an aspect in Hotline Miami 1. You all right, Ryan?
yeah, I just heard like a chorus of, when like in a movie they see like a beautiful woman or something, and then a chorus of angels plays.
Yeah.
Are you about
I
to
just
die?
heard that like extremely clearly, and I'm like, do I have a tab open, or is there someone in the hallway making that noise,
There's a hot
or
lady in
am
the
I
hallway?
seriously actually?
Are you
becoming,
stroking
like-
out right now?
Yeah, am I about to have this? It was so clear.
I had
Weird.
I had a little girl laugh in my headphones the other night, like clear as day.
It was
Fuck,
Alma
dude.
here.
And there was nothing in my tabs that was making noise, and it scared the shit out of me. Like clear as all day, I could hear a little girl go like for a solid like second and a half, laugh in my ears. It was really weird.
That's freaky.
But anyway, that was my problem with Hotline Miami 2, is that the puzzle
But
aspects
anyway.
Yeah, sure, yeah, whatever,
the puzzle aspects were somewhat removed because of the randomization, and it led to bullshit death after bullshit death, and you couldn't learn a level because the level was not always the same, and that bothered me.
Fair.
I don't
Yeah.
disagree. I think Hotline Miami is a good game that is going to be remembered as a big disappointment because of the fact that it's not as good as the original.
Wasn't he not planning on making a sequel, but it did so well he made a sequel?
How well did Hotline Miami do?
Hotline Miami, well, I mean, it's hard to gauge because a lot of it was in
Humbles,
Humble
yeah,
Bundles. Wow, have I reached the point where Humbling Bundle is my touchstone?
The Isaac guy just saying,
But I wouldn't be surprised if that has over 1 million owners on
Yeah, I
Steam.
wouldn't be either.
Oh yeah, 1.8, and then it's also on Vita. I think it's on PS4. I mean, even Hotline Miami 2 has almost 400,000 viewers, but Hotline Miami 1 was an enormous success, and I feel like deservedly so. So it's kind of going to be like the one that's not as good, which was probably almost unavoidable considering Hotline Miami kind of came out of nowhere. But I think there's definitely some problems with the game that are fair that people bring up a lot.
Yeah. Nick, what's on your list?
Well, I was kind of struggling about how to approach this because this was actually a great year for Metroidvanias, which I think I might be the only one out of the four of us that actually really cares about that very much. But I'm just going to go for the most niche one and then leave you guys to talk about the others in case that's the thing for you.
Cool.
So Odallus The Dark Call was one of my favorite Metroidvanias this year and one of the games that I think got almost no press and deserved a ton. It was a sort of
Never played
like
it.
8 to 16-bit retro-inspired, sort of Sega Genesis-looking Metroidvania. It played a little bit like a Castlevania game, but it was sort of like a gore aspect to it in its aesthetics. It was really well put together. The gameplay was amazingly solid, and I had a fantastic time playing through it. And I'm so sad that more people didn't see this game and try it out, because it was just so good. I had very few things negative to even say about it, other than I wish it was just longer. Did you see like any videos on it or see anyone talking about it?
I remember you talking about this a little while ago. I think you were even recommending that we check it out. It's just, it looks like a Super Nintendo game, pretty much, right?
Or Sega Genesis, I think more particularly they were going for. But yeah, similar genre.
And
it sort of did for Metroidvania what Shovel Knight did for like a Mega Man game, I think.
That's fair. Yeah, I sort of struggle getting into. Well, okay, Shovel Knight I think is a clear outlier or anomaly to this, but the games that very obviously are digging back into the roots of Genesis and Super Nintendo 8-bit 2D platformer stuff. This one looks a lot more like a Castlevania, Metroidvania sort of thing that might be a little easier to get into, but yeah, it's a tough sell. I think just the genre overall is a little bit difficult for me to get into.
The thing that I think makes it tricky. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay.
The UI, it looks so old, but the game plays like the way Shovel Knight is like an updated version of an old game. So although it might look like it's a little bit like behind the times, the game is actually super modernized. You just don't see it aside from the way it feels.
Yeah. I'd imagine that the controls are probably pretty good then.
They're pretty solid, yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's going to be one of the bigger ones, I'd imagine. Or bigger gripes for folks.
We had the same conversation when Nick brought it up before, I remember, about like, well, so many games have this kind of similar style of aesthetic that they're aping that it makes it like a little bit of a tougher sell. But I kind of feel shitty about that now.
Yeah.
Like thinking back to it, I'm like,
right?
It is stupid. And we couched it in this idea that like, well, it's not fair, but that's the way it is, just telling it like it is. But it does feel kind of shitty to be like, this game looks kind of generic, or at least it's a style that is used a lot. So it seems kind of, well, that's a good excuse to not play it, even though people are telling me it's really good.
Well, there's a reason for that, though, right? I mean, I think...
I feel like it's valid, but also kind of like... get over it, I guess, but I'm probably still not going to play it. So like I'm basically just pointing out my own willful ignorance, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that it's just like it's hard to get excited about playing it based on the fact that you're like I've played, Oniken and I've played, Shovel Knight and I'm like
I just wanted to keep pushing it just in case there was somebody that was like super on the fence that was like, man, this looks okay, but like I just need that ringing endorsement. Like I'll give you that ringing endorsement. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, it just I don't know, man. This is definitely my personal take on it. I don't even want to try to offer this as any sort of like grand opinion, but it really is. It's got to be something pretty revolutionary for me to want to go into a game like that. There's just so many other things to play right now, which is also another issue that we have. We're totally oversaturated with awesome games. Like there are probably literally 20 things on my list that I would play ahead of Odallus, and that's not even a knock on the game. It's just a statement of the state of the industry right now. Right. Is that there's just too much coming out that makes Odallus just sort of look like, oh, that's a 2D Castlevania sort of game. That looks pretty cool, but not really something I'm going to go out of my way to play.
The niche in the market, though, is that there's not a lot of Metroidvania games specifically. Although it looks like there are, this game plays specifically in a certain subgenre that you don't see everywhere.
Yeah.
And although this was a very good year for them, I could cite 3 more that I really liked this year. This one was probably my favorite out of them, which is saying something because it was against like Ori and the Blind Forest and Axiom Verge.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Those would probably be 2 of the other ones, right?
Those are 2 of the other ones, yeah.
Let's talk about Ori if we could, actually, if you want to segue into that real quick.
Yes, please.
You know what Ori's made in? Unity.
Whoa!
Madness.
Oh, shit.
Nick, you played Ori as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
All right, tell me about Ori.
I loved it. Ori is a graphically beautiful Metroidvania game where you play as this little creature that's trying to save a forest that's dying at the hands of some unknown evil. And, I mean, they do show that in the first opening cutscene.
I think I literally just watched that happen, yeah.
Yeah. So, your goal is to run around and solve little puzzles and collect new abilities that allow you to better traverse the area and reach new areas to then conquer dungeons. There's 3 major dungeons throughout the game, and there is an epic conclusion, and it's a really stunning game visually.
So having not played it, this is one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen. Yeah, honestly, agreed. It's incredible.
That's the power of the Unity engine, baby.
I hear they're coming out with like a the Game of the Year edition or something that's along.
Yeah,
You were
there's a
telling me that,
little
yeah.
bit of
Or-
DLC content that's coming
Okay,
up for
so
it.
there's going to be DLC coming out. All right,
Like
so
a,
I'll probably wait to
you
get
know,
it till that comes out.
complete edition or something
Right,
like that.
right. Definitive edition.
I'm gonna.
Yeah, that's
This is not related to Ori. You guys should go back to talking about Ori after this. But this,
All right.
people are gonna find this funny. So on
Right.
the Unity, like, here's the games made in Unity, like the gallery of stuff that is supposed to impress you about how good the engine is. One of the games on there is Afro Samurai 2, the game that the company who made it issued full refunds to everybody who bought it like a week after it came out and then pulled it off the store. But that's first off, that's funny. That's level 1.
Wait, when did that
Level
come out?
2,
When did that come out?
like November. Or
Yeah,
something.
I was gonna say that was really recently, huh?
Afro Samurai 2, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the studio that made it is called Redacted Studios. So I actually had to click on it. I had to click on the name to be like, did they actually redact their name?
right.
Or is their name Redacted Studios? And either would have been funny, but their name is Redacted Studios.
That's really good. Oh man.
Redacted Studios made a game that had to be redacted.
I sort of want to go off on a tangent there because I think I remember even talking about it. I played Afro Samurai 2 at PAX Prime, and it was like it was bad. It was a
Yeah.
glitchy mess. It was really awful.
Rob like brought it up in chat one time. He's like, "Oh, they're making an Afro Samurai 2." And you're like, Like, the first Afro Samurai came out in like 2007 and nobody cared. It was so bizarre.
I don't want to shit on it, but boy, it was a piece of work.
I think it's fair to shit on it considering it's maybe the only game I've ever heard of so bad they pulled it off the store and issued a full refund to everybody.
Not
Like,
even
that
due
was-
to like
I
Arkham
wanna
Knight
play
style
it now.
technical
It's
issues.
that
It was just
bad.
like it's so awful that they didn't even want people to play it.
They're like, it's better for our business if we just cut our losses on this one.
Oh man, yeah. Okay, let's keep talking about Ori and Blind Forest though.
I want to play this game.
Should we play Afro
Play
Samurai
Ori.
2 now? Yeah, play
will
Ori
play
instead.
Ori.
I need to play Ori, man. I don't know why I haven't played Ori yet.
Same here.
So
Wait, I'm the only one who's actually played it?
I thought Mathis had played it.
I did not play Ori. I said I'll pick it up after.
Yeah, you
like,
just said you'd buy it when the
shit.
DLC
Okay, yeah. You. Oh, damn. Wow, that sucks. Poor representation.
It's the same thing as Odallus. And again, I'm not justifying this or saying this is a good attitude, but it's like I've played enough Metroidvanias. I don't know what has to be there to motivate me to play a Metroidvania now. If people are like, this is one of the best games of the year, maybe one of the best Metroidvanias of all time, and I'm still like, I'll get to it. You know? Like, it's just, for whatever reason, like, indie platformers are, like, almost played out for me. I need another 2.5 years before I'll go back and check out another one. It has to be Shovel Knight, basically, right now.
Yeah.
And that's not the fault
It's got
of
a
the
really
developers.
high bar to hit there too.
It's basically like it has to be so good because there's so much competition, and I maybe they're there, but I can't get excited about playing like platformers anymore.
With Ori though, it has that particular thing for me that I was talking about. It has that appeal, which is entirely just the visual aesthetic of it. Like it's so satisfying to watch and to look at that alone is probably going to be what drives me to play it.
There's a lot of things going on here to talk about. I think it's really interesting to me that you guys seem like so burned out on platformers. I think I just intrinsically love them so much that I can't tire of them. But I've gotten thousands of them emailed to me to play over the last 3 years, and I still am excited to play the next one.
Yeah.
Although I do acknowledge that about 90% of them are not that interesting to me, even though I love the genre. They have to have something that brings that to me, and if it's a Metroidvania, chances are it's probably going in that direction already, and if it's a Metroidvania with a beautiful art aesthetic, it's like, I'm super in.
Yeah.
That's like, I will play that, guaranteed I will play that then. And there happened to be several of those that came out in 1 year, which is pretty rare.
You know, oh my God, Ori came out the day after Hotline Miami 2 and City Skylines. That was the same fucking week, man. March 11th.
That was a
Like,
wild week for
that is
everybody.
It took me like
crazy.
4 months to play it, though.
Oh my God, how insane. Well, let's maybe go a little later in the year. How's that sound? How about we take a look at... Well, I think we sort of need to give another nod to Nuclear Throne real quick. I know we talked about it pretty recently, but...
There should be a segment that is basically like good shit in early access that came out this year.
Right, okay, so let's go
Nuclear
with that.
Throne.
Broforce.
Broforce, Prison Architects, Kerbal Space Program. Everybody knows about these games.
Yep.
They're out now,
Yep.
and they're good. If you've been waiting, you can pick them up.
All right, there we go. Done. Not 4 on the list.
It was so easy.
I like it. Well, speaking of knocking things off the list, I don't know. Well, no, let's not do this yet. Mathis.
I'm looking right
I think
now.
we're back around to you, right?
What else did I play that I was like really blown away by?
I got another one if you want to wait a minute.
Yeah, go. I'm gonna look through my list because I can't think of anything that was like amazing.
Sure. Well, before I even say it, did anybody else play Renowned Explorers?
No.
Yes.
You did. Okay. Nick?
I did not.
Nick, okay.
It is better than Hard West.
It is. I think I'd agree with you there, yeah. Tell me a little bit more about it.
So Renowned Explorers it has a couple of different layers, but on one layer it's a squad-based tactical strategy game. Actually, I guess it's a little XCOM-y, but it also feels almost like a turn-based RPG as well, sort of. But I guess that's the turn-based aspect of it. And then the layer abstracted from that one up is basically a visual novel like the Yogg, where your characters have certain stats, and then that allows them to do basically skill checks in conversation that can give them rewards, that gives you loot. Then that abstracts after that mission out to like the macro scope, where you can use that treasure to further your renown and eventually complete your goal of becoming the most renowned explorer in the world.
Mm-hmm. So it has this sort of rock, paper, scissors mechanic disguised as a very interesting, like, happiness, sadness, and anger emotion battle that you have with your enemies. So, for example, you can play as an entire team of people that just goes around and tries to befriend everyone instead of trying to attack them and take them down. And it doesn't even really make a huge difference. It's mostly just sort of like a fun little mechanic thing that is cute. But there's also parts that incorporate it pretty well that make sense. Like, for example, if you fight one of the first bosses and befriend them instead of going aggressive on them or something, they might, like, in the next bout of dialogue, they might sort of turn on their previous allies and sort of help you out a little bit. So there's cool little things that work out pretty well like that. But overall, I think it was just, one of the issues I had with it primarily was the difficulty. I don't know if you really had this issue. Maybe I just suck at these sorts of games, but I had to restart like 5 or 6 times, and then that sort of just burned me out on it.
I think that's by design.
Yeah.
Like, it's got a little bit of that overarching campaign thing where if you take a misstep early, it puts you kind of on the wrong track. But the thing I actually dislike most about the game is what you actually brought up about, like, the befriending system and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. That to me is like, I don't want to come too far over the top, but from what I hear about Undertale, there's meaningful differences if you want to play a pacifist versus a genocide run. It actually changes a lot about the story and the way that the game is played. Mm-hmm. In Renowned Explorers, your friendly moves are not, like, emergent. They're just attacks that use, like, your friendly stats. So it's like, I'm going to charm this guy. The way you charm him is not by, like, having another layer of gameplay that, like, goes around their HP. Literally, you charm their HP down.
Yeah.
If you charm them and then hit them with a sword, then you
So it's like a different damage type?
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's
poison, lightning, charm, basically.
Okay, gotcha. That's weird.
Yeah, it's purely aesthetic, pretty much. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's cute is the word I'd use for it. It's cute.
The only thing that bothers me about it is that it hints at, or it gives you the impression that it's going to be a larger system, but instead it's basically just like you have a friendly attack that also does damage. It kind of, like, when you talk about it to people, you're like, oh, it's a sandbox. You don't have to kill people. You could just, like, make everybody friendly. But making them friendly just erodes their HP, and then they leave the screen. Like, it's mechanically exactly the same. Mm-hmm. So that's what bothered me the most, is that it's like, it hints at something that could be a larger kind of mechanic, but instead it's just another way to attack. Apart from that, though, I thought it was pretty solid.
It's got
I never
a decent,
beat it, but I played a lot.
Yeah, it's got a decent amount of depth to the combat. I think there are enough variations and skills you can unlock, and there's equipment that you can get to, and there's different little gadgets, and there's a research tree you can unlock as well. So all the parts are there, but it's nothing really revolutionary. And especially when we're having conversations, especially right now, about how games that enter into a genre that's sort of already oversaturated need to bring something new to the table. I think it sort of tried to do that, but didn't really do it very well with that mechanic we described.
You said too for what you're saying there and the comparison between Metroidvanias and like tactical squad-based strategy games. Because Renowned Explorers is probably a worse game than Ori, but I played it no problem because, you know, I might only... Even Hard West, I was like, well, I only get like 1 or 2 XCOM-y type games a year, so I can make time for this. That's not fair. I mean, Renowned Explorers isn't a bad game, but... you know, maybe in a couple of years I'll be there. I'll be like, oh, I can't justify trying out another XCOM.
I'm realizing that about myself now. Yeah, now that you've pointed that out, that is an interesting hypocrisy I'm holding myself to. Is that I'm willing to go for.
Play the first 15 minutes of Ori and see if you get into it. That's all you need.
I
That's
think
the
I
hardest
need to,
part,
honestly.
though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about
Gotta
it for.
install it.
That's about it for Renowned Explorers, I think.
Yeah, it's fine.
I got one.
Sure.
Now, so speaking of another good, it's been a good year for Paradox and City Skylines, but one that I adored was published by Paradox, was Pillars of Eternity.
Yeah.
That old school Baldur's Gate style RPG, which I mean falls under the theme of is that Unity?
Is made
No,
in
it was Unity. Yeah. the thing with that game, though, if you notice, the character models are I don't want to say garbage. They're pretty bad.
Jesus.
They're pretty bad, but the backgrounds are all like hand drawn,
Basically garbage.
They are pretty bad.
He wasn't
like
gonna
a
say
shit
any of this until you mentioned it was made in Unity.
It's true. It's true. It wasn't gonna. Anyway, the game itself. I don't know. Ryan, you played a little bit of it, did you?
I played like 9 hours, but
Okay.
it just
And you
didn't
guys
hit.
didn't play
You
any
need
of
like
it?
150 hours to be able to beat the intro, so...
Yeah, all right. The
basically-
game's like 50 hours long, actually.
I don't have that familiarity with like the old school RPGs, and I ran into a puzzle that was like, hey, like remember all the clues that you found in this dungeon, and I was like, no. And then that's pretty much where it ended.
So that's the problem, right? Like, they didn't. It's still very much rooted in old CRPGs. There's a lot of complexity, there's a lot of depth. The leveling and the not so much the combat, but the leveling system is a little bit more modernized compared to how it used to be. It's a little bit more flexible, but there's a lot of reading, there's a lot of choices, and there's a lot of puzzles in which the answers are given to you through the environment and pieces of paper that you can read and stuff. So it's a very deep, rich, old school CRPG. And if you don't like that, you're not really going to like Pillars of Eternity, but it did, I think, what most people were hoping it was going to do. I will agree with Ego Sensei in chat. It's a little too easy because of the way that combat's done, but there's enough customizability within difficulty options and inventory options in the options menu where you can make it harder on yourself. But it's a great game, but if you are looking for an easier CRPG that, as far as like not a lot of depth is concerned, Divinity exists, and Divinity is excellent. And I think it's a really good secondary option for somebody who maybe is just getting into CRPGs. But Pillars is kind of the love letter to the Baldur's Gate style RPG, and I loved it. I adored that game.
Awesome.
So that's where I'm sitting.
Sweet.
It's just not for me right now.
You know, it's kind of funny in a way. That's the way that I can relate to the concept you keep saying about that there's too many things and it needs to stand out.
Yeah.
I think we all have our own angle on that. It's like it would take a lot to get me to start to play that, even though I do grant that when I saw it demoed for me, I thought it was very pretty. I didn't see a lot of reason that I wouldn't be interested in it at the time. It's just all the reading, all the time that I've got to put in. It's like it's a little too much for me.
I think I'm just especially with you on that. It's not even a knock on the genre. It's just the investment of time, man. It's just too much. I can't do it.
I needed a trip sitter for Pillars of Eternity, and I'm not throwing this on Mathis, but Mathis was not the trip sitter I expected him to be.
What is it?
Like
Trip sitter? Like somebody to be like,
I needed a guy.
Somebody come
there
with
for him
you.
on
Yeah,
Skype.
exactly.
Oh, a guy?
Yeah.
That's what
you mean to sit with you and build your character.
Well,
with you?
no, but I put in like I think I put in time faster than you did at first,
Yeah.
and then I got to a place where I was like, I need someone to give me the solution. I'll admit, I'm too casual. I need someone to give me the solution to this barrier. And you were like, well, I'm only like an hour in. And I'm like,
I'm also the guy who...
Mathis fucked it.
All right, I fucked it for you. Go play Divinity, though. You'll love that. My problem is, like, I'm the kind of guy who'll loot all the books and then read
Every
all
single
the books.
page, right? Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's my problem. Like, you were ahead, but I was like combing every building for as many things as I could get my hands on. It's the reason Witcher has taken me so long too, because every time I get a new book, I'm like, oh, I'm going to read it and see what's going on in the world or whatever, and that's definitely not for everybody.
No wonder this dude's writing scripts. Okay, let me jump over to Armello real quick if I can. I want to hear about Armello from you
I really
guys.
play Armello.
Nick and Ryan did though, right?
We played it like for an hour.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah,
so
we
did-
wanted
And
to
then
play
we
it
thought
more.
about it for a while.
Yeah. Okay.
We wanted to play. Yeah, we had a little salty board gamey type experience with it, like a Risk
got mad at
style
each other?
experience. Yeah.
Oh, so this.
Okay.
I
Oh
was
my God,
dicking
my
around
bad.
and I accidentally fucked over his game, and then I was trying to play it off to be funny, and then it wasn't
Oh
funny.
no.
It's not even worth dredging up again. But it was like the classic like board game salt.
Yeah.
Where
All right, we
It
don't
does-
have to
it
talk
doesn't
about
matter.
Armello. That's fine.
However, but then I wanted to play more of it. I actually liked the mechanics of it. But it just broke on my computer. Like I changed the settings to make it like windowed, and then it broke and wouldn't load. It would just have like an error every time I loaded it. And then I uninstalled the game, reinstalled it, and it still had the error. And then I was like, God, I gotta like go into the config file or something. That's way too far. But cool thing about Armello, the dice is just a little piece of trivia. The dice are actually modeled like 3D objects. It's not just a random number generator that it maps the result to. They actually like have collisions and stuff in the air, and the results that show up on top are the result of real physics.
That's pretty
I
cool.
thought you were gonna say the dice are made in Unity.
I thought that was coming
going down a
afterward,
deep
yeah.
hole, man. I don't want to go down it.
Technically, I think the whole game is made in Unity, so
Probably.
Or just the dice, though.
It's got a really cool art style as well. I like it's got a very Studio Ghibli feel to it.
That was a pretty cool game. I would have played it again.
Yeah, we
Armello
can
is
jump past
pretty
that. Yeah, all good.
I think it's okay. Let me put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little convoluted. There's like
Yeah,
there's a
but I
lot
can
of
follow it.
systems.
It only took me 45 minutes to be able to understand it, whereas something like Blood Bowl, I think is going to take me 10 hours.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, there's no no.
You can enjoy Armello while not fully
Casual.
understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you ever want to get into Blood Bowl,
Nope. No, I don't actually. I'm fine. I really don't like football very much.
I wanna ask Ryan again, but I do want to mention this real quick. You Must Build a Boat was
Yes.
one that sort of got a little brushed to the wayside. I guess understandably so. It wasn't really like a big momentous game. It's just sort of like a fun little match 3 that showed up. But sequel to 10 million, so I think immediately a lot of ears are perking up as a result of that. Just again, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. It's match 3 where you make progress by building different parts of your boat, making your boat bigger, and you match things up. You can unlock treasure, you can fight enemies. Pretty fun. I mean, I as someone who's terrible at match 3 games, and I only found that out by way of playing You Must Build a Boat.
It's pretty hard though.
It's isn't it? Yeah, I felt like it was a little bit tougher.
complex. At least there's a lot going on at one time. Maybe it's a more multitasking thing.
But I had a pretty good time with it.
You Must Build a Boat is a good game.
agreed.
I really liked it.
Awesome.
It just
and
wasn't
it's
one of
like-
those games that changes your life, so it's it's
Yeah.
probably not going to make it onto the list, but it's still good and still respected, and I still recommend it.
And at $5 on Steam right now, I'd say hard yes. Get it.
I agree. I
Hard
agree with one of the
yes.
Hard
with
yes.
Lucky
It
Tame.
is not a shit eel.
That's true. I enjoyed Honey Pop, but I'm probably the only one.
Do you want to talk about Honey Pop? I don't think we need to.
It's a great match 3 game if you like match 3, but it's also basically porn. So,
Yeah.
one other game I'd like to talk about that's last on my list of things that I can think of is Hand of Fate,
Yeah,
Which
I
we
had that
talked
on mine
about.
too, actually.
which was made in Unity, which I'm aware of. But I really
You
enjoyed
didn't
that
like
game.
it that much, huh?
I hated it.
Did you really like Hand of Fate? I want you to tell me about that. Yeah.
I did. I enjoyed Hand of Fate a lot. I think I liked, even though it wasn't done perfectly, I liked the idea of the whole card system and then going into the battles that you kind of approach on that kind of card map, and then the cards turn into gear, and you have to do this third-person kind of Batman, really shittily done Batman-style combat. And I thought that was really cool, but it wasn't done perfectly. It was a little too easy. It felt a little janky. But overall, it was serviceable for the overall kind of card game. The card game was fun. I thought the guy who was like narrating your experience was incredibly well done.
Great, yeah.
There was a physicality to the coins and how like everything was placed on the table. Everything was like in front of you, and the backgrounds were great. There was just, it may have been an average game. Like gameplay may have been average, but the whole package was really good, and I enjoyed it a lot. I really enjoyed my time with it. And I know you all put some time into with it too. So.
I'm on the same wavelength with you there as far as the overall scope of the game. I played Hand of Fate, and again, it's one of those games that I had very little expectations going into.
Same.
But like you said, combat was just shitty Batman. I think we had basically the same conversation when we talked about it the first time on the podcast too. It's just shitty Batman combat. There's no two ways about it. But I loved the idea. I think the idea is great. I love the presentation of the idea. I loved the way things felt. The guy, like I don't remember his name or what his role even was, but the dealer, narrator. I guess the narrator. Yeah, he was great, and he really brought it to life for me. But then I just sort of had the life sucked back out of me every time I had to do combat. It just
combat should have been
good.
Something completely different.
Yeah,
Armello style combat would have worked maybe with that. In a weird way, if they had, because Armello combat's cards, right?
Yeah,
dice.
Or
it's dice.
Is it dice? Oh, okay.
I thought it was cards. Maybe cards boost. I don't know.
Yeah, you can use the cards to like give you a better chance to roll attack dice, basically.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely didn't hit the nail on the head with what it wanted to do, but it
got close.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good game. I think I would recommend it still now at what is it? It's like 20. Oh, it's $25. Okay, so it's a little higher up there, but it's worth $25. I think I'd say that.
Nick, not agreeing.
No, okay.
I don't really like it very much. I kind of found the premise to be original enough that it's like, okay, there's potential here. But in general, I thought it was kind of bland. I didn't really get the thing that would call me to keep playing it over and over again. And at $25, I certainly wouldn't recommend it.
The combat is, I think, like weirdly enough, I feel like the game is better than the sum of its parts, but the combat is bad enough that I can totally understand that. Mm-hmm. If you're spending 40% of your time basically playing, like, I mean, it is shitty Batman, basically. If you're spending like at least a quarter, maybe closer to 50% of your time playing shitty Batman. I can see how that would impact your experience.
We can't call it shitty Batman. We're not saying
I like it, actually.
Shitty Batman is $25 on Steam if you're interested in getting that.
The game is not shitty Batman.
Yeah.
They could
the
have
combat
20% of it.
The combat is a worse
implementation
of the systems from Batman.
Mm-hmm. I wish they had done something different with the combat. I like the idea, and I like watching my guy get geared up as the cards fall and stuff.
Yeah.
But just the combat was just bad.
It's very interesting. Like there's parts of this game that they just absolutely nail. Like they get it so good. The atmosphere is awesome, and the narrator's so good. But then you just get totally driven out of it when the combat starts up.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I still think it's good. I mean, it's definitely going to be divisive, depending on. I mean, I can see both sides easily.
It looks pretty good too. So if you're somebody driven by graphical appeal, it looks very nice. Hand of Fate, $25. That's at 15. Do you think? Yeah,
15 would help.
Yeah.
$12.50.
$12.50.
Here we go.
I'm just fucking with you.
Say like $11.76, something like that. Yeah.
Here's my feeling: is if in the end of the year discussions we have to say, is it worth this price? It probably isn't.
Yeah, that's fair.
Or maybe not. It's probably not worth the money. Is not what I'm trying to say. It's probably not worth talking about in the end of the year stuff. If I like Hand of Fate. If I put it on my top 10, it would feel like a compromise. Like I'm taking, like it was a shit year. Not that Hand of Fate is bad, but it's not good enough to feel good about putting it in like the top 10 for me.
Right. It's in my, I'd say it's probably in my top 15, top 20 releases this year, which is it's pretty admirable to be even up that high because again, this was just such a huge year for. Not even just indie, but AAA had a pretty.
I feel like it was mostly like it was a great year for indie stuff, but I feel like AAA killed it relative to last year. Yeah. Like when I think back to this year, I'm like the stuff that I liked the most was largely AAA.
You've probably got a AAA on your list that we could talk about, right?
Well, I think I like Fallout 4 more than most people. I think that would make my top 10 easy. Even though I didn't play a whole lot of them, Bloodborne, Witcher 3, and Metal Gear Solid 5, I feel like if I invest the time to beat them, they would all have a pretty good shot to be in the top 10.
Same.
I put Rainbow Six Siege at like the bottom of the top 10, somewhere in that range right now. I think that game is getting slept on quite a lot. Trying to think of other AAA stuff.
Just Cause 3.
I haven't played it actually, but
I only put a couple hours in. I was kind of done.
I do feel like this
11.
has been like an outrageously good AAA year.
Definitely.
It was a wildly good year, AAA, no question.
Halo 5, Call of Duty,
one
Black Ops
of-
3, if you want to mention those, yeah.
Any one of Bloodborne, Metal Gear Solid 5, or The Witcher 3 could easily be like consensus game of the year if the other ones hadn't come out that year, probably.
Let's see.
You want to wrap up and like go towards like Afterbirth?
Yeah, I've got a few more that I could... well, Nick, yeah, what do you
I
got?
have one more, maybe
Yeah, hit
two
me.
more. I knew this was probably going to come eventually, but I figure we should probably acknowledge the beginner's guide. at
Yeah, I
least.
had it on my list too, yeah.
Didn't play
Yeah.
it, so I don't know.
Ryan, you have not played it, right?
No, I'm going to be honest, I probably won't.
Okay.
I like the Stanley Parable, but it didn't hit me quite as much as it seemed to hit most people. I don't think the beginner's guide is something that I necessarily wouldn't like. I'm just not like excited about playing it.
It's kind of all over the map from the reception I've seen. Some people are super into it. Some people just think it's absolute pretentious garbage. And a lot more than I expected didn't like it. But for me, it hit me really hard. And I found this weird parallel that it just like, it followed my own life in a weird way. It's really hard to explain. It's another hard game to talk about, much like Undertale, because anything you talk about with it is spoilers. So I don't even really know how to approach it other than just to say that I absolutely recommend it.
The
And I think
trailer,
the price is fair.
The trailer on Steam is doing an excellent job of describing it by just literally all it is him clicking through a list of files in his file explorer, and it's just like all this different random shit that has nothing to do with each other.
Well, so the reason that the trailer was like that is because they literally couldn't talk about the game in any
Right.
way without spoiling it.
Exactly,
To even
yeah.
discuss the premise in some detail gives away part of it. So there's almost nothing to be said about it other than, like, you might like it or you might not, but I think it's an experience worth having.
Yeah, that's just about it. I want to sort of put a damper on things by saying I did not have a very revolutionary experience with it. I thought it was just bland, kind of, to be honest. I did not get any emotional baggage from it. I didn't make a connection. It just sort of seemed like, okay, that's cool.
fine.
Yep.
Different things for different people.
Yeah.
I just think that it's so worth it if you're one of the few people that did get a huge emotional grab from it, that it's like, you got to try it and just see if you're maybe that person. And if you're not, at least you got something to talk about, no?
Yeah, no, I just, it didn't feel that great to me. It had such a huge precedent, obviously, being basically the successor to the Stanley Parable. That pedestal is pretty ridiculous because Stanley Parable established a cult following like instantaneously. And then the Beginner's Guide came around, and obviously expectations were vastly different for everyone, but well, maybe not even so much, honestly. I think a lot of people sort of just expected the Stanley Parable too. But the Beginner's Guide, it really fell flat for me, I'll be honest. It totally sucked the wind out of my sails. So that's
I don't know
that's
how
all I
you
wanna
have
say about it.
expectations, though. Like, when it came out, there were just a couple of weird dissonant-looking pictures, and then it was out, and then we played it.
No, I think it's sort of similar to like the way I felt about Titan Souls, where maybe I spun my own narrative about what I
Right.
wanted it to be. So that's definitely probably part of, or definitely probably, yeah, probably part of it for me. But I'm not even going to entirely say that's what it was. I think, my personal experience with it was suboptimal, but I also just sort of want to say in general, like, it's not really that important of a game, in my opinion. I don't think it's that significant. I think it's passable, honestly. That's just my opinion on it.
I think
though.
it's important for the conversation you can have after you've played it with someone else that's played it, but I don't know in the realm of gaming if it's as relevant, or if it's more that it's in the realm of art that it's more relevant.
That I would definitely agree with you there.
Our
I think,
game's art.
Yeah, if you want to have another our games art discussion, this is a great game to play.
Spoilers, they are, but whether they cross over a lot or not is up to you how much you see that.
I completely agree with you that this is a great game for discussion. That's a great point. Yeah. That's true, but
That's all. I think
stick
I've said
with
my
what I've
piece.
got. Mhm.
I liked it.
Olli Olli 2, real quick, if you want to talk about that. Sequel to Olli Olli, the skateboarding game. I thought it was pretty great.
It's better than Olli Olli 1, and Olli Olli 1 was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't even... It wouldn't sniff at the top 10, but it was worth playing.
Yeah, that's about it. Did anyone play Not a Hero?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, tell me about Not a Hero.
Not a Hero is hampered by terrible controls that made it kind of a side-scrolling Hotline Miami for me personally. That was like way not as good as the
Did you play with
source material.
controller or mouse and keyboard?
I tried both, but for whatever reason, you know, when I talk to people, not everybody seemed to have the same thing, but there was like maybe a half to three-quarters of a second
we talked
delay.
about that. I didn't have that problem.
For whatever reason, it killed my experience of it.
I didn't have that problem, and I think I enjoyed it a lot more than you. I think it's a pretty good game if you're not having weird controller bugs. But yeah, your description of it is kind of like a Hotline Miami in which you're going through buildings that kind of have multiple paths depending. You pick a hero. The story is like Bunny Lord is running for president, and you're basically his henchman and going out and taking out his competition, like murdering his competition. And it's kind of got a morbid humor about it. It's really funny. Mm-hmm. Controls are you just kind of going through buildings, taking cover, popping out, shooting. Each hero has different weapons, so some heroes are better at long range, some are better than short range, some have different special abilities. But it's about getting through the level without dying, or and getting through it within a certain amount of time. It's got a cool art style, and I found it really fun. I don't think it's anywhere near my top 10, but I had a good time with it.
Fair enough. Probably in the similar vein to that would be Party Hard, I would imagine, right?
Ugh, I did not like Party
Hard.
I really didn't
like
like
Party Hard. Okay.
I did not like it
I
at
guess
all.
we don't have to talk about that one either then.
I didn't play as much as Mattis, but I thought it was okay.
Yeah? Party
theme
Hard or
song.
Not a Hero?
Party Hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, there just wasn't enough to justify like doing the same levels over and over and over and over and over.
It oddly suffers, in my opinion, from a similar problem, not exactly, but from Hotline Miami 2, in that you couldn't master a level because the levels were randomized every single time, and every time you went in there wasn't enough options to kill people. Like, the options were, like, oddly limited, and I quickly would exhaust my options and would have to just resort to stabbing somebody and then hiding their body. If they just got rid of that and let all the options in the map all at once, it would be a lot more fun for me. And I with a puzzle game like that, I want to master the levels and try and do as best as I can. And when you remove that aspect and put RNG in its place, I get frustrated because I'm like, well, this wasn't what I was experiencing last time. Now I have no idea what my options are. It's kind of annoying. And this song plays on every single goddamn level, and that's annoying.
I wasn't even necessarily on board with the premise, honestly. Like, I'm not even sure that from the very beginning I was like, this sounds like a good idea. Like, murdering a whole bunch of people at a party, like, I get why you could make that interesting if you had enough events built into it, but like you said, it's just tedious. And then when your reward for messing it up is like, you get to do the whole thing again, it's like you're just frustrating the player.
Yeah.
So maybe you need to rethink how the gameplay loop works then, if that's just all it is tedium then.
Yeah. I mean, so much of it was like, they played up like that Hitman element of like you can set traps, but really like setting traps didn't have creativity. You just walk over to something
on a thing.
and hit.
Yeah.
And then
sometimes they'll have a timer, sometimes it won't. Like,
the rest of the gameplay loop was literally just waiting for there to be nobody watching you, and then you press a button on somebody.
It's like a not funny version of McPixel. Like, it has very little depth.
yeah,
It was okay.
There we go.
Sorry.
It's not an affront to gaming. It's just kind of like it's just like a little bad.
Yeah.
all right.
So we're going into sort of these ones that we are debating including in our list, but feel we need to mention, I think, has been the last few of these. Another one that I think is probably going to fall into that same criteria, Mike Bithel's new joint, Volume, came out this year as well.
His new joint.
His new jam.
I did not enjoy that game that much, but
I didn't really either, yeah.
I know there are a lot of people who did, and I understand why, because it's pure stealth boiled down to its most basic, straightforward form. I just learned maybe that like collecting little blips and trying not to be seen by robot men was not that exciting for me. I don't know, the artistic style didn't really pull me in. The story bored the crap out of me, and the gameplay was a little too simple for me. I'm more of a fan, I think, of action stealth games like Splinter Cell, like Metal Gear Solid, as opposed to like pure stealth.
Yeah. Pure stealth as a genre, I think, is difficult to get into because it is entirely based on the idea of not interacting with enemies at all. And that is probably a turnoff to a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's okay. Like, I mean, again, in terms of disclosure, we know Mike Bithell. He's been on the NLSS a couple times, and Josh's 52-hour stream, of course. I found Volume a little disappointing. I think it suffered from the weight of its expectations a lot.
Absolutely, it did. Yeah, no question.
It came out like this weird indie game phase of like 2012 where a dude makes a pretty minimalistic platformer, and then his next game is like, this is one of the top 10 games we're most excited for next year.
Yeah.
And then you play it and you're like, it's got good mechanics, but it's not that engaging. And there was some janky stuff, like you could fuck up a solution but just run fast enough to get to the time gate and then respawn there and kind of like never really feel like you sussed it out.
Yeah.
And the story, a little, I don't want to say played out, but like modern day kind of like Robin Hood thing is, you know, you've seen it once, you've seen it 100 times. But I thought it was pretty good. Like, I think it's one of those games where in a weekend, over a couple of days, you play it through and you're like, it was okay.
Mm-hmm. With the amount of hype that was generated for it, it just, I don't know, it seemed like it was maybe doomed to fail to a certain extent. And it was a big budget game, too. I mean, you think about, like, Andy Serkis, fucking Danny Wallace, and I guess probably Charlie McDonald probably even pulled a nice paycheck out of it, too, because he's pretty big. But, you know, it had such a huge budget, clearly, and then, I don't know, I
How well did it sell?
Well, that's a good question, too, but
I'll take a look.
Thank you.
Note that the Steam Spy numbers are going to not have the PS4 stuff in it, and I do think it's one of those games that probably did relatively well.
What website do you typically use for that?
Steam Spy.
Steam Spy. I had pretty much the same feelings about it. I played through probably the first, I don't even know how much, probably like the first 50 or 60% of it, and I never really felt like I was getting into it. I just sort of kept going through the levels. It was really easy to cheese, too, which sort of took me out of the game quite a bit. Like, you could really easily run to checkpoints and just completely reset everything, or you could just run around walls, and it felt really... It took you out of the immersion of it, especially when it's a pure stealth game where the entire idea is try to remain sneaky and, you know, like, try to get the ultimate satisfaction of going in and out without being detected. But then you just sort of, like... Well, okay, obviously you're not forced to do this, but like it's very easy to find yourself just sort of cheesing through a level without much regard for the actual mechanics.
It doesn't look like a lot of people own this on Steam.
It's entirely a mechanics-driven game, right? Like, that's the whole thing of it. It's very pure.
Yeah.
And if you're going to make a game that's very pure, you're going to expect the player to get the most out of that experience that they can, which means they're going to min-max it. And if they min-max it, they'll realize they can glitch it. Mm-hmm. And if they do that, they've created an entirely different game than the one that was intended for you to play.
Yeah, there you go.
I think it's one of those games, the problem is it's only easy to recommend if somebody's like, hey, I'm really excited to play this. It looks like it's super up my alley. Mm-hmm. Then I'd be like, no problem, go for it. But if somebody's like, I'm looking for like an indie game from 2015 to play, what should I get? And like Volume doesn't come to the top of the list.
Yeah. It's unfortunately got a lot of competition this year, too, again, as we mentioned. So
Steam Spy's showing under 10,000 owned.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
It's anywhere between... It's like 8,000, maybe.
Wow, that's... Oh, my God, that's shocking. I thought it did a lot better than that.
Me too.
I got to see this for myself now. Yeah.
Here, I'll just link
it's
it to you.
listing less than 7,000 owners is what I'm seeing.
Give or take 1,000.
That is startlingly low. Wow.
And that's with all the press push it got.
It's only got 104 reviews on Steam, so that actually sort of... I'm genuinely blown away by that. That's crazy. Those are insanely low numbers. Well, anyway, we don't have to harp on Mike Bithell for too much longer, I'm sure. I would struggle to recommend it, but well, here's the thing: is like even if someone approached you and was like, "Hey, I need a really good pure stealth game. What do you got?" Do you think you'd say Volume?
I don't know the answer.
Yeah,
I
I guess so.
answer
That's
that
true.
question.
Yeah,
I don't know what a pure stealth game is.
I would probably say Mark of the Ninja and then be wrong.
maybe.
action stealth.
That's true. All right, that's sort of a rough question, but still, you're right. Let's see here. What else we got? I think I might be nearing the end of my list. There's a few that I sort of kind of want to mention. Like there's I Am Bread, which was just totally silly. Chroma Squad came out a little while ago. How many people played Chroma Squad?
I played.
You played Chroma
I
Squad?
watched you guys play it. I didn't play it myself.
It's okay.
Yeah. Probably not even going to talk about it, honestly. Axiom Verge I did want to talk about, although I haven't played it.
Oh, you want me to talk about
So I want Nick to talk about it.
All right, so Axiom Verge is in the sort of the same camp as Undertale in that it is like a massive game undertaken by one developer, and it's a very, very ambitious and massive
How long did it...
Metroidvania.
I know it took him a long time, right?
I believe it was like 3 or 4 years, maybe more.
Yeah.
So it's been like his big deal project for ages. And I played through the whole thing. I 100%ed it, so I saw all there is to see in the game. It's one of those ones where it's like mechanically you'll have a good time playing it most likely as long as you're into Metroidvania games. Artistically, it's very pretty. There's some great music in it. The whole thing is really well put together, but the story didn't really grab me particularly well. And it sort of just felt like I was playing through it for the mechanic's sake more than to get something out of it, like on a transcendent level, if that makes sense. So although it registers as one of the better Metroidvania games out there, it's not necessarily because of the strength of the story, or really it's more just to do with the presentation. I do recommend it, and I think that the price for it is fair. I just think you should temper your expectations. If you're going to go into it expecting some grandiose story, it gets a little convoluted, in my opinion. But there is a lot of depth to it. There's a ton of weapons to unlock, although I only mostly used one throughout the whole thing. And there's this like ARG within the game, if that makes sense. I guess it's not really an ARG if it's in the game, but it's like meta to the game, where you have to decode these things that like add new rooms, and there's these weird warp zones and things. There's just secrets that are very difficult to parse, but I like that. If you're into the cryptic stuff, this game's got you covered on that. In general, I think it's a good game. Just probably come in with like middling expectations, and you'll have a great time.
Awesome. There we go. I like it. I'm going to go ahead and say that's my list, apart from the obvious big one. And then, you guys got anything else you want to talk about? No?
I will mention Dandy or a Brief Glimpse into the Life of the Candy Alchemist, the game with the longest title in the world.
I've never heard of it.
I know this is probably not a super popular one, but I just wanted to mention it because I had a really good time with it. It's like a side-scrolling, sort of like a shmup, but with like an Isaac overlaid on top of it, where it's like a procedural permadeath, rather. You come into little segments of the gameplay where you'll eventually end up at an item. You pick one of 3 items, you augment your character, you get stronger, you keep going, keep going, keep going. It has a really, really great art style, fantastic music. In general, it's very minimalistic, but it's also very accessible, and also a little bit difficult towards the end. In general, it's one of those games I think it might not be for everybody, but for those that find out about it and think that it's pleasant to look at and play, you'll probably have a fantastic time with it as long as you can, get on board for the premise. So for those that like Isaac, I'd probably recommend it.
Having seen this for the first time right now, I sort of totally want to play this.
Yeah,
Looks pretty
it's
good.
really polished. It's really well done, and they
Yeah.
keep adding more to it. So I definitely recommend it. It's not even super expensive either. No.
Oh, what's
It's,
that face? What's that
Brian
one?
didn't like it.
No?
Brian thought it was very shallow, and I don't even blame him. It's fine.
Look, I think it kind of sucks. That's okay.
Difference of opinion.
Exactly. It's okay to have a difference of opinion, but I thought it was like super shallow iOS kind of aesthetic going on that I was not really into, and I did not enjoy my time with it. So I'll just
you want
leave
it to be
at that.
Isaac. It's the thing. It's not entirely Isaac. It's more shallow than that.
I just wanted it to be better.
You want Isaac? Play a Wizard's Lizard.
There you go, man.
It doesn't even suffer from the Isaac comparison, in my opinion. It's the shooting mechanics I don't find very fun. relative to anything.
That's a broad statement.
I don't want to be the bad guy. I just I don't have nothing against the developers. I just think I don't like the game.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Her story, I know Math has played.
Yep.
So real quick on that.
We'll talk. Yeah, it's hard to describe it as a game in itself. You need a notepad, a pencil. Open up a notepad. It's about going through old police videos on this old 1995 computer. Like, it changes your screen to look like a 95 computer. And you're basically going through this old forgotten case of a man who was killed and all the interviews with his wife. And they're all out of chronological order. And there's a ton of them. And you're constantly cross-checking what she said in one video to what she said 6 months later. And trying to piece together whether she was the actual killer, if she's guilty, if she's crazy, or if she's just totally innocent. And it's a fun puzzle game that requires some patience and is pretty effing awesome. It's all live acted too. It's all it's not computer.
I've heard the
generated.
performance by Viva Cypher is pretty impressive too.
She did an incredible job. It's a really fun game that is not going to be for everybody.
Awesome. There we go. And that really should be it, I think. Yeah. Besides, I think one more would be Invisible Ink.
Yeah, I slept on it a little bit. That's a really, really good game that I wish that I had played a lot more of it. I guess probably still could, but I'm playing XCOM right now, so they're similar enough that I don't really want to. But it's really good, and I heard the DLC was pretty good too. That is probably my second favorite game that Clay has ever made. Mark of the Ninja would be at number 1. Number 2 would be Invisible Ink, as I'm not a huge fan of Don't Starve or Shank 2.
Nice. All right. And finally, Afterbirth.
I thought maybe you forgot.
No, give me your Afterbirth. Your final grade of Afterbirth before we even talk about it for the umpteenth time. 10 out of 10?
If Rebirth was a 10 out of 10, then Afterbirth is probably an 8 or a 9.
I almost in a way, I don't even want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Not because it's bad or anything, but I think we all know we love
Afterbirth. That's fair.
They fucked up some things, and depending on how much you have an aptitude for the kind of controversy that surrounded its release, there's something. Not everybody likes the new characters or some of the new challenges, but apart from that, it made the game much more replayable, and it just is a pretty much if Wrath of the Lamb was necessary, Afterbirth is necessary if you want to keep playing Isaac as the definitive Isaac experience.
Yeah, I think I agree with Ryan for the most part. I think they made some things a lot better. Overall, the game's a lot better. But there are some serious gripes that I still have with Afterbirth that I didn't really have with Rebirth that much.
Such as?
I think, for instance, and I understand they attempted to address it recently, but the Mega Satan bullshit, especially as The Lost, which I'm trying to not shoot myself about right now, is I dislike reliance on RNG so much, and it drives me up a wall that there's so much reliance on RNG if you're gonna lock content behind achievements, don't make the achievements RNG. You're locking away a portion of the game, whether it be an item, whether it be whatever, behind an achievement that which the game tells me when I've deserved it. I don't have any control over it, because the way they addressed it, in case you don't know, is initially you just needed to try and farm deals with the angel, bomb the statue, beat the statue twice, get keys, which means ignoring deals with the devil and maybe trying to put donation money into your donation machine to increase that chance. They recently changed it so that you can go to the self-sacrifice room and step over the spikes 8 or 9 times, and then an angel statue will show up.
Whoa!
And do it again,
Oh, hold on. You went super robot. Wow. That got really bad really fast. You were speaking normally, and then you were like...
That was a really good impression.
Thank you.
Am I back or not?
No, you're still kind of real body.
You're like 70% back.
I'll say while you're waiting to recover, I'll say that I really love greed mode. The more I play greed mode, the more satisfied I am with it. I've played so much more greed mode than I have regular Isaac lately. Like I don't know if I'm alone in that, but it's such a cool new way to play it that I never even thought of before. It's really reinvigorated my Isaac spark again. It's so cool.
Am I back?
The only thing I don't like about greed mode, well,
back,
there's a
yeah.
couple things,
Okay.
but one of the things I don't like about greed mode is that, in a way, because greed mode is the conceit behind unlocking this other secret character, once you get to 999 cents, I kind of feel like there's no point in playing it. But then I'm like, well, there's no point in playing
Isaac.
the regular version of the game
Yeah.
either. But at the same time, I'm like, I can't see. I'm playing so much greed mode now because I'm having these runs where I have like 150 cents and then just fucking donate one and the machine breaks. And I'm like, I can't. I can see
1%
myself,
my ass.
Yeah.
I can see myself taking some time off from greed mode.
Somebody described it. It's like it's not 1% of a chance to explode. It's like a 1% of some other factor or something
Well,
like that.
it's not a 1% chance to explode. It's a 1% chance to explode per coin.
Yeah.
So like,
okay, so it
actually,
would like
if
sort
you
of
have like a 1% chance and you're donating 100 cents, it'll probably break because that donation well, I shouldn't say it'll probably break. It'll probably break, but chances are it has a good chance to break, especially because the probability is going up with every single one that you donate.
right.
But I do agree with Mathis, but I think this is like the Angel Room stuff. The only reason it bothers me is because you have to get the achievements. Once you get the achievements, it's done, and you never have to touch it again.
But again, you're relying on the game to tell you when you're allowed to do it, and it's annoying.
And I agree with that, and I'm in that. Like right now, I'm doing like Lost Mega Satan runs, and probably will be for like at least a few days, if not longer. But like, it's not that bad. Like once you get it done, once this period's done, it's just Isaac.
Yeah, when
And-
the period's done, I understand that. It's just like, for me, the running theme with Afterbirth, and I think Afterbirth is a great expansion. I will preface it, but the running theme with Afterbirth so far seems to be really good ideas marred down by wanting to fuck the player. So Hush is a really cool idea for a boss fight, bogged down by the idea that it needs scaling health. And I think that's really fucking annoying because it's just a long fight. It's not a hard fight. You learn the patterns, and it's time consuming. I'm like, if I never have to fight Hush again, I will never fucking fight Hush again because I don't find him fun after 10 minutes of fighting.
In
Kills
place-
your momentum.
Yeah, it kills the momentum, and it's fucking annoying. And I'm
In
like,
place of the scaling health, would you just give him a huge health bar?
give him a huge
Yes.
health bar. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. 100%. And Ultra Greed is the same way. It's like, I think Little Horn is a really cool design for a boss. I think all the new bosses that they've put in are really cool in that there's like a kind of method behind their madness. You just learn how they work, more so than like Monstro, which is pretty simple. Ragman is a floor 1 is really cool. But Hush and Ultra Greed are really incredibly cool ideas that are just bogged down by a terrible buffing, scaling health system. I can walk in with the most powerful run in the world, and Hush will still take 3 minutes to kill because fuck you, you don't deserve to destroy him.
Yeah.
If I was to weigh in a little bit here, I think I generally pretty much love the thing, but the few complaints that I have are that it feels like this hasn't been fully thought through in a lot of ways. And what I mean specifically by that is there's sort of a mixed up message regarding a lot of the items, because they kind of change from being punitive to being all of a sudden forgotten about. For example, Cube of Meat achievement used to be locked behind getting to level 4 Meat Boy. That used to be one of the hardest things to do in the game because it was strictly based around our RNG.
Right.
And now you get
Right.
Box of Friends, where you can very easily get that. The Lost used to be one of the hardest things to do in the game to achieve much with, and now he gets Holy Mantle. So like they keep having this message where it's like, here's something really hard, but if you just wait a while, it'll probably get a lot easier. So that makes me wonder, should I even bother doing the Keeper stuff, or are they going to buff him eventually? Like, I really don't want to play as that character very much, and I suffered through the Lost stuff because I wanted to feel good about it, but now I just don't know if I have the enthusiasm to care enough to bother.
Like, I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't understand the mindset, but this is just because we're different people. Like, I'm like, if something's not worth doing, then I'm like, it's not worth doing. You know, I guess like you're missing co-op babies and like maybe a couple of items, but
Well, if
Like,
you
they
don't
didn't-
do all the achievements, including the co-op baby stuff, you don't get the final most powerful item in the game.
if you don't care enough about the game to suffer through it, then like why do you care about getting the most powerful
Because
item
I'm
in
a
the game?
completionist.
I don't know if it's even necessarily an argument of caring enough about it. I think it's just a matter of like, I want to care about this, but it's preventing me from being able to.
It's
I
just
don't
an
know if it is,
unnecessary
though.
roadblock to be frustrating when it just could not be frustrating and it would probably be better.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes it better. I love the idea that maybe it's my perspective is I'm gonna put 1,000 hours into this. I like that there's 1% of that time that is gonna be hell. Like it's gonna be torture.
Yeah.
But then at the end, I'll be able to say like, "Ooh, I did it," and I've got like a cool war story about it. Instead of just like my end goal is not to get 1,001%. My end goal is just to, eventually I'll get there. But I'm gonna keep playing the game every day. I know if I just like keep putting in, 2 or 3 hours a day, eventually I'll get there and I'll keep having fun with it.
But my like, it's not even like I don't like the idea. Going back to the Hush fight as an example, that I can have an incredibly underpowered run for a long time, and I play incredibly well, and I earn deals with the devil, and finally a deal with the devil that I've earned because I've played immaculately gives me an overpowered run, and then I can walk into the Hush and go, fuck you, I don't care that you earned that, this is going to take you 10 goddamn minutes. I hate
the Hush
that
fight,
shit.
I think the Hush fight should be reworked, 100%. Ultra Greed, I don't feel like that anymore. I feel like Ultra Greed, if you go in
Ultra
with
Greed was
high
annoying.
damage-
Yeah, Ultra Greed can go down pretty fast.
Yeah.
He was a problem early on. I think they changed him. The greed mode, like talking about greed mode for instance, I'm with you that like now that I've done greed mode and it's done on the Keeper, it's done on Lost, like I'm done with greed mode. I don't really have a reason to go back because greed mode is really easy to break.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I can break greed mode 8 out of 10 times probably because there are a bunch of items with that gameplay style that I know that to look for, and I'm like, until I get it, I'm just gonna do it. Like, I'm gonna reroll with the reroll machine or whatever. Oh, there's D20. I've won the game.
And that-
Or
I mean,
there's
I'm gonna
blank
be
card
honest,
Era, I broke the game.
I'm going to be honest with myself. That's part of the appeal to it for me. Like, I love that I can go into greed mode and probably get a D4, get a D100, or just get something totally ridiculous that's going to make the run awesome. And I feel like that's a mode that just sort of promotes that. And that's the appeal to it for me. I am probably more of a casual Isaac player in that I don't really love the challenge inherent to getting all the unlocks and getting the 1,001% completion and all that stuff, but I really enjoy just like the element of Isaac that lets me just feel like a total badass and have all this crazy shit happening. Like that's my favorite part by far.
Which is why the message is muddled with something like the Hush, because you don't get to have that experience anymore.
Yeah.
If you're having a really strong run, it's like, sorry, you don't get that.
The Hush, after you do the achievements, is 100% optional.
Right, except for dailies, really, but
It's
if
optional
You're
on
doing
dailies.
Dales.
Yeah.
Well,
it's-
yeah, it's optional unless you want to be in the top percent.
If you're playing the daily, you probably are interested in getting a high score, right? That's
Yeah.
sort of a safe assumption to make.
But
I
I
don't think it's bad design to make you get more points for doing an optional boss that's probably the most difficult boss in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm with you. Like, yes, once you're done with it in the vanilla base version of the game, which is what once all the unlocks are done, which is what we'll all be playing the most. Hush is 100% optional, and I have no intention of visiting that boss once I don't have to touch him again because the reward isn't worth it. The reward is what do you get?
Yeah.
2 item rooms where you can choose one item, and they're just like they're just regular item room items, so they're not even like amazing. They're not like Deal with the Devil or
Unless you have
Angel
chaos.
items. They're just trash, unless you have chaos. The shop is just a regular shop, and the golden chests are just
regular
I mean,
golden
they're just
chests,
it's just
yeah.
like like what is the point of coming here? And then when you beat him, you don't get a reward. You just get to go to the next floor.
Yeah.
It's like awesome. I'm so
I think
happy.
it's the parts where I have friction. Yes, hello.
Hi, Kate.
Okay.
Or a stranger.
Sure.
Right now.
Okay,
wandering into
I don't
Ryan's
want to show
house.
my banking information on the webcam if possible.
Go.
There you go.
All right. It sounds like we might need to wrap up here.
No, she's got to go. I can stay.
Okay.
Have a good time.
But you,
Where I have the friction is that I do feel like on some of the design decisions in Afterbirth were made to counter things that players liked in Rebirth. That's the part where sometimes like
Thank you.
Hiding things to the extent that they did. Look, I don't know if they gated content for that amount of time or if there was actually something going on behind the scenes. But the fact that they weren't totally open about it is like players love playing your game. I think you should just give them more of what they want. But instead they see, they watch really good streamers play the game, and then they're like, oh,
around that.
Exactly. They balance around like people like us or people like Cobalt, and they'll say, oh, people are like breaking the game too much. Let's nerf this item, nerf that item. Let's make it so undefined doesn't give you an error room anymore. It's just like Hush for the example behind Hush is like so clear. Is like, well, people are stacking up way too much damage, which makes all bosses too easy. So we're gonna put in a boss that has scaling HP so you can't get around it. But that does run counter to what makes Isaac so fun. Is like engineering those like ridiculous runs. Like the point of Isaac is not necessarily that it's always difficult. Right. The point of it is that it should always be enjoyable, and it doesn't feel like it's too easy if you earned the damage that you got.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if you engineered your run, it's not like a lot of the times when you get OP runs, it's because of decisions you made to take one item that isn't necessarily more powerful than the item you have now, but has the potential to be, and you kind of work towards breaking and making your run super powerful, and they've removed a lot of that. Another example I see coming up in chat is they removed, which is a really weird, chest looping. You can't loop on the chest anymore, and it is a very certain specific set of circumstances that lets you loop on the chest. And to remove that happened, once every 10 to 20 runs, maybe? At most, really? Yeah. That's what you're going to take away? Like, that's half the fun. I can loop on the chest now. Like, that's fun. I can become overpowered. If you have a really shit or mediocre run, but you make it to the chest with items that allow you to loop, you can then make your run winnable.
Don't you agree then that seems like the message is a bit muddled? Like they're not entirely sure what they're trying to give the player as an offering then? They don't know what the strength of Isaac is? I
sort of want to play devil's advocate and say, like, I don't think a ton of I shouldn't say a ton. I don't think every decision that they made is weighted based on what the player wanted. And I sort of feel like they shouldn't think like that, I think a lot of what they're doing is just what they want to be doing as the developers of the game. I think the whole ARG very clearly was just sort of something for them, more so than for the players, although obviously it's nice for the people that like to get involved in that sort of stuff too. But I don't again, being very devil's advocate, because I'm not even sure I honestly believe this perspective, but seriously, it's like a lot of what they do, they sort of just want to do it because that's the way that they wanted the game to be,
I mean, I'm watching chat, and I was wary about this, because I don't think that Afterbirth makes Rebirth a worse game at all. Mm-hmm. I just think it's very easy to see the spots and not see like, oh, they added 40 new items or 100 new items or however many items it was. We added Greed Mode, we added Lilith, we added the other secret character. I mean, we've already said it's the Keeper.
And I think the reason for that is because they didn't just leave well enough alone. They went back and retroactively things that were normal on not only just Rebirth, but vanilla, like a very simple change that's like, really, this has been in the game fucking forever and you're changing it now, is Judas Book of Belial. Book of Belial is no longer 100% deal with the devil chance. It has been 100% deal with the devil since vanilla, but Afterbirth they decided, no, we're going to
the whole character of Judas.
Yeah.
They just went back and changed things that have been part of the game.
Adding a paperclip to Cain makes him totally different, in my opinion. Like, that's a drastic change to that character.
It is, yeah.
Right. But just changing core items and changing what they do and how they function to make them objectively worse, instead of just adding more items that are both good and bad, which is what I was hoping they were just going to do with Afterbirth. They also went back and made good items worse, which is my problem with what they've done. Again, I'm with Ryan. I think Afterbirth is still excellent. I know it sounds like we're nitpicking, but the problem is
we
that
are.
We are. We're on the inside. Yeah. And anybody who's deep enough to see this is on the inside. Mm-hmm. Dailies are a great addition, but they also illuminated something that was clear, or what I guess was unclear before, which is that Mathis and I are consistently second worst case scenario, top 5% of players. Like we're the top like 1 in 20 people that play the game. Sometimes, top 1 in 500 people that play the game, depending on how we do it. And then most of the people in chat are going to be in that same boat if they still care about Afterbirth. Like these are complaints that are for the hardcore audience, not for the people at large. But at the same time, I do resent some of the changes in the game. The Book of Belial nerf doesn't really make much sense to me. Trying to make the game harder in bad ways, I guess, is what bothers me. Like the Hush fight, people are trying to like do gotcha moments in chat, like, oh, so you hate the Hush fight because it's hard. Yeah. No, I hate it because it runs counter to the stuff in Isaac that's fun, which is not, it's like fighting Super Envy with base damage on the first room. You don't hate that because it's hard, you hate it because it's tedious.
Yeah. It's also like, experiential, the same way Dark Souls is. If you fight a boss 100 times, it's not hard anymore, it's a matter of following a procedure, and that's what all this stuff is.
The Hush and Ultra Greed fights were fucking awesome the first time you played them, right? Like, they're so cool. Yeah.
I remember discovering it, Hush, and being like, this is wild, but then you learn how they work, and it's just like, ugh, I just don't want to do Hush. Another room you have to rush for.
Yeah.
I wish there's no way, well, there's not no way. I have to keep clarifying, because we are so far, like, inside baseball now. That, like, we can actually talk about things in a specific way instead of just an abstraction where we can bullshit. But, like, I can't see myself consistently fighting Hush outside of dailies because it's just boring. Yeah. Like, if you have high damage, it doesn't make me want to fight Hush. If I have super high damage, I want to fight Mega Satan because it's fun. But the only reason like I would want to fight Hush is like, okay, I have great defense, and viewers will like seeing me struggle slightly, and I have a chance to get 3 to 4 new items.
Right.
So we're saying now that like the people that are playing Isaac that are just playing it for themselves for their own enjoyment or that have a couple hundred hours in it, they're probably never fighting Hush.
Rarely, I guess.
Yeah.
But they don't have the added benefit of needing to entertain someone while they play.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly. It's just like somebody is just playing Isaac for themselves is just sort of like, I don't really want to fight Hush. It doesn't really seem appealing.
The Hush pool, like one easy change, make the Hush pool better. Even if you like take out one of the items,
a reward for beating him.
That would be a step up too.
If you got a rare reward, a guaranteed special item for beating the Hush.
Yeah.
Some special items are shitty. Some special items are amazing. There's still that variance in there. It doesn't guarantee. If you're good enough to beat the Hush, you're gonna win your run anyway. The only other thing that can happen is you fight the Hush, you go down to like 1 heart, you die in the cathedral. Like, just make it so that fighting the Hush actually gives you something for the process.
Fill the room with evil hearts as soon as you kill him. That would be cool.
Like, if it's supposed to be a special fight, then like make it a special fight. Like, give you something good for doing it. When you beat the Fallen, you get a Deal with the Devil item. The Fallen ain't no thing. Yeah. Like, the Hush is like an actual challenge some of the time. Chat's saying like maybe
so weird.
put like Dad's Key after the Hush fight. That
would be exactly. It's something that simple.
That changes the pathing of the whole situation. See, right now you go from a difficulty spike that's as high as it gets in the entire game back down to the Cathedral, which is a huge drop in difficulty. That doesn't really make linear sense if that's the path you're taking through the game. So that confuses me. I also don't understand what's up with the fact that they knew there was a Mega Satan boss fight in Rebirth, but they never tracked its progress, and now they do.
I think that's
why,
like just an oversight, or they're like overly anal about protecting the secrets in their game. So maybe they didn't want to put like a visual indicator of like, oh, you haven't done this yet.
Yeah,
people would be like actively.
They could still put a hidden 0 or 1 in the background that nobody ever sees, and then activate it once.
But they see it.
Yeah,
data miners, man.
I think the one thing a lot of people can agree on, without giving disrespect to Tyrone or Edmund, is that they care 10 times more about the actual like secrets in the game than anybody else does.
Oh yeah,
that's probably true.
I spoiled myself in the secrets immediately because I don't give a shit.
And that's fine. It's their game. If they want to bury treasure, that's cool. But most people are just like, the ARG was really cool, but at the same time, I was also like, man, if I was making this game, I never would have done that. For better or for worse. I would have just been like, here's all the content.
And that's sort of the point I'm making, is that, like, this again, the ARG was probably mostly for them. They got their own satisfaction out of it. And the choices they're making, they clearly, I think they are a lot more passionate about the game than people would have had you believe, especially when the whole fucking fiasco was going on. People were saying, like, Edmund hates the Rebirth community. Blah, blah, blah. Like, no, they very clearly are very passionate about this. So I try to at least, take it with a grain of salt as far as why they make the decisions they do. But at the same time, there's very clear objections that we have that we think could be very easily solved at the same time.
It's what Tyrone and Ed said after the release of Rebirth, is basically that the game belongs to the community as much as it does to them at this point. And that's, people with 1,000 hours in something feel like they do have a certain sense of ownership over it. And oftentimes people in the eyes of the community think they know better than Ed, Tyrone, and Nicholas what would make the game better. And sometimes I think they do. Sometimes I think the decisions that Ed and Tyrone make are necessary because you need almost like a parent to be like, no, you can't just eat candy for every meal.
Yeah.
Like, I do think there should be difficult parts of
They
IT.
need a no man, just like George Lucas did in the prequels.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There
They do need somebody to be like, why don't you make it so, I like that there's shitty special items, even though that bothers a lot of the eyes of the community. I like
No,
that.
I do too. I'm all right with that.
But they need somebody to basically be like, no, like, we're not going to give you your toys till after you eat your vegetables, right? But they also, I think they need to open up a little bit. Not need to, because the game stands on its own just fine. But I do think they need to open up to the community a little bit more for some buffs and some gameplay changes. Like, Krampus showing up so often is still pretty lame, especially because his pool hasn't been expanded.
Yeah.
Deals with the Angels still relatively suck.
Still totally suck, man.
What do you mean? They're even worse now. I love when I go in there's 3 pennies. My favorite.
Oh, yeah, that's... And, you nerf items like Stopwatch. Krampus' head is like a year ago.
You're
nerfed
complaining
that.
about Deals with the Angel now? Well, wait till Afterbirth comes out. We're gonna fuck
like,
you.
I love
just-
that 1920s evil guy voice you can do, man. That's really good.
They just changed the self-sacrifice room that's been the same since vanilla now.
Yeah.
Like, why now?
Yeah.
Why not at the
I'm happy
release of
about it.
Afterbirth?
I think
Yeah,
that change
I'm
is actually really positive.
They
But
desperately.
I want to understand the thought behind when these things happen on the timeline of why this thing happened now instead of earlier
It's
or later.
probably honestly just as arbitrary
It's
as
arbitrary.
it seems. Yeah.
I don't think it's arbitrary right now. I think it's, people are complaining about the angel statue stuff being a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Partly. Because, if as you do the Mega Satan runs, now you're like now that Mega Satan is necessary for 1001% completion, it makes sense to combine that with the need to do something with self-sacrifice rooms to actually make that meaningful.
Yeah.
But
They
they
were-
were Mega
they
Satan
were
fight on the
vestige-
daily count.
Yeah, that would be a start.
The Mega Satan fight during the dailies. So that way I have a guaranteed key if they're making me go to Mega Satan.
Yeah,
Right.
I would like that.
They've just been vestigial for so long, it just seems so odd to me that this was the thing that pushed them over the edge to change them. Like, why did you have them in the first place if they serve no purpose, really?
Yeah.
Did
Well,
you ever
there's-
use them? I never used them.
That's why we're getting into some inside baseball stuff.
Yeah,
That's-
I was
that's,
gonna say,
the
I think-
theme that Edmund really likes of hurt yourself to make your run better, but it doesn't give you enough rewards.
The
so.
best thing about them was the freaking 2 skulls that would be in the corner most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe I get a demon heart here. Sweet.
Right.
Fuck this room. It's an empty room.
So we're probably about at the point where this is all sort of going over the heads of a lot of people. So let's maybe call it there. Say overall, Afterbirth is fantastic. Again,
We love
I think we need to
Afterbirth,
reiterate that.
despite the 20 minutes of whining we just did.
It's a must buy if you must buy is optional, but it's like Enemy Within. If you're gonna keep playing it, you should buy it.
Yeah. If you're enjoying if you're enjoying Rebirth and you don't have Afterbirth, I think Afterbirth is just the easiest purchase you can make. It makes, not only does it add so much, but again, it's stuff that we don't mention a lot. The fact that it makes the game better fundamentally. Like, the animations are better. Everything just feels
It makes it
smoother.
complete.
Yeah, exactly. So it just
There's UI elements that they've added that should have been in the game in the first place that are
Right.
now there.
So
so-
just to improve your Binding of Isaac experience, you probably want to get Afterbirth. That's just the bottom line. And I think that'll do it. I think that's it. It's a strong showing, man.
15.
2015 indie review wrap up. GG, gentlemen.
What's everybody's number one? Did we
Yeah,
cover
I'm
that?
going to go ahead and ask that. What's everybody's number one indie game this year?
Ryan.
Ryan, you
I
start.
don't count Afterbirth because
wouldn't
it's an expansion. So and it's arbitrary, but whatever. I would count Rocket League number 1.
Yeah. Mathis.
Witcher 3.
Witcher 3. Nick?
Duck Game.
Duck Game. I like it.
Nice. Just you,
And
Ben.
you?
I know. You got to think.
It's Rocket League, man. It's got to be. It's got to
Rocket
be.
League wins.
Yeah. 2
We
votes
split
to
the vote,
1 to
damn
1. There we go.
I didn't know we were voting on anything like that.
Rocket
All right.
League just, I stand by what I said, man. And if they want to put this on the back of the box, feel free. Rocket League is one of the best games I've ever played.
Witcher 3 is indie, you nutcases.
It is.
It is.
No, it technically is. Yeah, no, I
It
know.
kind of goes in through the back door, but it's indie.
It doesn't seem like it, but we promise.
That's like saying shit published from Paradox is not indie. I think
Yeah,
I would
like
consider it.
if City Skylines can be indie, then The Witcher 3 can be indie. Come on. We got to give it that nod.
It's not indie. Why? Because it's good.
Because it's huge and sold millions of copies.
The Witcher 3 not
it's
made
good.
in Unity. Is
Really?
Rocket League indie game now? It's never
Yes!
not been, man.
Absolutely! Unequivocally!
No, but it's popular
100%!
though.
Just because the
It's gained
studio's
mainstream
loaded now.
acceptance.
Oh my god. Is Rocket League indie? Okay, come
But it
on.
was on the PS4, man. Is it indie?
Hey, is Minecraft indie?
Is Minecraft indie? I don't
No
know.
longer.
That's actually one you got to think
Is
about. for a
Minecraft
second.
art? Who knows?
Is Minecraft art? My
Oh,
giant
man.
golden dong in Minecraft is
Hell yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Roundtable Live. If you're new here, this is the show we do every single week here on Twitch. Normally it's on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. PST. But you can also catch the VOD over on my channel, youtube.com/BearTaffy, or on these guys' channels, Mathis Games and Rocket League Smile. Northern Lions got a bunch of other stuff you can watch, too, if you want to watch that. Also, feel free to follow us here on the Twitch channel. It's twitch.tv/Roundtable Podcast. You can get notifications that way, as well as following us on Twitter at Roundtable PC. Normally at the end of the show here we do segments such as Ask Roundtable and Nick's Weird Games. This is sort of a special show this week where we're doing the Indie Review Roundup, so we obviously have gone well over our normally allotted time today, so we're not going to do those extra segments here at the end. Also, normally we would thank our patrons, but Patreon has locked me out of my account, so that's fun. I have no idea why. I got to figure that out. But I do want to say genuinely, thank you guys very much if you have been supporting us on Patreon. We really do appreciate that. It's been long running now. It's been since like February since we've had that Patreon page up, and people are still maintaining their pledges from
We
then.
appreciate that
So
sincerely.
that's honestly incredible. So thank you guys so much. And if you've considered supporting the show in any way, even if it's just like $1 a month, please feel free to go over to patreon.com/roundtable. That's pretty much the entire financial funding of the show. So we really appreciate you guys doing that. Again, thank you for all the support. It's roundtablepodcast.reddit.com is actually where we pulled a lot of the game suggestions for today's show. So thank you guys very much if you contributed to the thread over on the subreddit. And that should do it, right? I think I nailed everything. We're good. Review on iTunes as well if you like. We can still use those. 5 stars on iTunes does do a great deal. You can download on iTunes and SoundCloud as well if you'd like the MP3 file for the show. That should be available later today.
And do review this episode on the subreddit also.
Yes,
Feel free
please.
to talk about
yeah,
it.
absolutely.
We'd love to hear your opinions.
If there's games that we missed, absolutely feel free to discuss it on the show thread on the subreddit. And yeah, that should do it. So thank you guys very much for watching this episode of Roundtable Live. We should be back next week, but if not, we'll definitely be back for the start of 2016. So looking forward to that. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye!